Chapter 45-31. Xiaohua had snatched the Ganoderma horse from Yun Chong in the sword tomb back then. The Ganoderma horse had turned into a spirit herb as soon as it entered the space, but after the yin and yang split in Xiaohua's space, the Ganoderma horse had regained its spirit body. At the same time, Xiaogua was also born in the space, becoming the first plant spirit body to take form in Xiaohua's space. After Xiaogua, no more plant spirits were born in Xiaohua's space. It was as if all the Zhongxios were gathered in Xiaogua's body. Because of Xiaogua, who was self-taught in the art of refining pills, Xiaohua almost didn't pay attention to the Ganoderma horse. Xiaogua had appeared on the Ganoderma horse earlier, but when Xiaogua came out alone, Xiaohua had completely forgotten about the Ganoderma horse. At that moment, Xiaohua had some plans in his heart, and only then did he remember the Ganoderma horse he had in the past. "I'll let Master know," Xiaogua said in all seriousness. "I used to play with the Ganoderma horse, but later I had to refine pills and share Master's worries, so I didn't have time to play with him. I saw the Ganoderma horse play very well with Little Silver a while ago." Little Silver? Xiaohua couldn't help smiling bitterly again, and the image of a chubby spirit mouse appeared in his mind. Xiaohua's experience in the heavenly prison had left him without any distractions, and he had also left Little Silver in the cold on Shenhua continent. It seems that Little Silver's mother has come back recently, so the Ganoderma horse should be with them. Xiaogua said like a little adult again. "Haha, if that's the case, then that's good. You all can go and help Master." Xiaohua couldn't help laughing when he heard this. He waved his hand to shake the Kunlun mirror, and brought Little Black, Little Yellow, Little Silver, and the Ganoderma horse out of Shenhua continent. "Daddy." As soon as they were out of the space, Little Yellow bounced and said, "Do you miss the boy? Could it be that there was something that made things difficult for Father again? Don't be afraid, the boy has already grown up. The boy will help you." "Hello, Daddy," Little Black said and stood quietly on the side. "Master." Sure enough, Little Silver was still fat, and his body looked several times bigger than before. He didn't have the spirit mouse's intelligence at all. The Ganoderma seemed a little afraid of Xiaohua. It had been wagging its tail next to Xiaohua, but when it saw Xiaohua, it immediately tucked its tail between its hind legs and opened its mouth, but didn't say anything. "Why don't you guys take a look at where we are first?" Xiaohua looked at these little things with a smile and asked in a low voice. Where is this?" Goldie looked around in surprise and asked a few questions. Then it said regretfully, "There's nothing strange about it. Father, there isn't even a beauty in this place. Why did you come here?" "Sweat." Xiaohua smiled bitterly. He didn't know if he should reprimand Goldie. "This place seems to be different from the Thousand Demons' sacred realm." Blackie looked around and said with some doubt, "However, there are actually quite a few spiritual items here." Little Silver's little eyes looked around, and a lazy expression appeared on his face. "Master." Xiaogua was pleasantly surprised. This little one seems to sense a very familiar aura. There seem to be many companions who are similar to this little one. "N." Xiaohua smiled like an old fox. "Do you think it's better for these little friends to fend for themselves here? Or to cultivate on Shenhua continent like you and learn alchemy?" "Of course it's better for them to stay on Shenhua continent." Xiaogua answered without hesitation. To be able to do something for the master, to be able to make a difference, and not waste one's life, this is the greatest happiness. To fend for themselves in this place, it's simply a waste of time. "Good." Xiaohua clapped his hands and said, "Master's task for you is that you must think of a way to help more little friends like you, so that they can pull themselves together from this waste of time and become useful spirits." "Really?" Hearing Xiaohua's words, Xiaogua's face glowed with a holy light, and a heavy sense of mission made even his voice a little low. "Of course." Xiaohua nodded. "I'll leave the task of saving the fallen spirits on this land to you. Don't worry, Master. This little one will definitely complete this task. From now on, they must turn over a new leaf and work hard." Saying this, Xiaogua's figure flashed as he was about to fly away. Xiaohua hurriedly called out, "Let Jima follow you. Ride him over there." Okay. Xiaogua was even more grateful as he rode Jima away. "Daddy." Goldie smiled and said, "Could it be that you've taken a fancy to some big sister? You're too embarrassed to say it, so let boy do it." "Go." Xiaohua glared at Goldie and said, Go and find as many spirits as possible for Daddy. Don't you think Shenhua continent is too cold? That's right, that's right. Goldie's eyes lit up. That's right, big sister Dai. Watches Xianxia cultivate every day and doesn't have time to talk to Boy at all. If you can find some spirits to talk to, spirits with some lines, that would be even better. Boy will go now. Saying this without waiting for Xiaohua to say anything else, Goldie slipped away like a wisp of smoke. Boy, go and take a look too. Little Black was always half a beat slower, and only now did he say this unhurriedly as he flew over. Seeing that all the little things had gone and he was the only one left, Little Silver was a little flustered and made a squeaking sound. Xiaohua waved his hand and instructed, "You go too, and take a look to see if there's anything good." "Yes, master." Little Silver was overjoyed, and with a flash of silver light, he disappeared in a moment. Ha ha! Xiaohua laughed heartily. He could almost see a bustling scene of a group of plant spirits like Xiaoguo refining pills in Shenhua continent one after another, and piles of pills were being refined endlessly. Xiaohua smiled, sat down cross-legged, and began to meditate in meditation. He knew that this was a place where spirits were everywhere. If he released his divine sense or pressure, it would disturb the spirits and have a bad impact on his plan. Seeing that 2 hours had passed and Xiao Gua and the others still hadn't returned, Xiaohua couldn't help but frown. He was afraid that Fairy Xingyu would get impatient and release her divine sense or come to look for him personally. It was also here that some light and shadows flashed in the distance. Xiaohua hurriedly stood up and was about to send a telepathic message, but when he saw the situation in front of him clearly, he couldn't help but be a little stunned. Admittedly, Xiaohua could think of using the advantage of Xiaogua's spirit body to trick those spirit bodies of plants, but he still underestimated Xiaogua's persuasive power and charisma. He saw that under the green vines in the distance, rays of light and shadow were floating over like water. In front of them, Xiaogua was riding on the Ganoderma horse, gesturing and saying something to several spirit bodies. Of course, these spirits weren't human, but plants and trees. Seeing Xiaohua, Xiaogua hurriedly jumped down from the Ganoderma horse and flew in front of Xiaohua to salute respectfully. "Master, this little one was fortunate enough to not disappoint you. These are the 10 herbaceous tribes here. They know that Master is kind-hearted and are willing to serve Master." 10 herbaceous tribes. Xiaohua recovered from his surprise and said in a low voice, "I'm afraid there are more than 10,000 spirits?" "I'll let Master know," Xiaogua said proudly. Of the 10 herbaceous tribes, only 6 tribes have tribe leaders, and each tribe has about 13,000 spirit bodies like this little one. The 10 herbaceous tribes have a total of 150,000 spirit bodies. This many. Xiaohua looked at the light and shadows, and couldn't help but understand. Herbaceous spirit bodies were very thin, and could be the size of a thumb or as thick as a blade of grass. One light and shadow could have more than 10 spirit bodies, so 150,000 spirit bodies really wasn't a lot. "Yes, Master." Xiaogua nodded. "If Master is willing, this little one will teach them the art of alchemy one by one." "Of course." Xiaohua smiled. "Are they all willing to come to Shenhua continent?" "Of course," Xiaogua answered. The spiritual chi of heaven and earth here is already somewhat dried up, and herbaceous spirit bodies can't defeat wood spirit bodies, not to mention those beast races. So when this little one said it, they were all very happy. It's just that they still have 2 requests. "What requests?" Xiaohua was overjoyed. This was a win-win situation, and it was exactly what he wanted to see. The first request is that these 6 tribe leaders want to go and see the situation of our Shenhua continent. Xiaogua smiled and pointed at the 6 slightly larger spirit bodies. When the 6 spirit bodies saw that Xiaohua had seen them, they immediately lowered their heads respectfully and placed their hands on their foreheads that were like stalks of grass. "No problem." Xiaohua smiled and took out the Kunlun mirror, and said, "Master can send them in at any time." "What's the second request?" "The second request is that Master can also turn them into a human form like this little one," Xiaogua said proudly. "They are very envious of this little one's appearance." Xiaohua thought for a moment and said, "This shouldn't be a problem. However, if they want to turn into a human form, they need to cultivate. Master can't help just because you want to. Only when they cultivate to the same level as you, then they can transform." "Yes, this little one understands," Xiaogua replied and flew over to communicate with the 6 spirit bodies. Sure enough, when the 6 spirit bodies nodded, they once again transformed into a human form with a smile. Master, bring them in. Xiaogua turned her head and said to Xiaohua. Xiaohua urged the Kunlun mirror to bring Xiaogua and the 6 spirit bodies into the space. The Kunlun mirror flashed, scaring the spirit bodies into fleeing like water. Xiaohua didn't pay attention to these spirit bodies. His mind entered the space and turned into a jade archive. Xiaohua stood in midair. It was a bit strange. The 6 spirit bodies that followed Xiaogua into the space were actually 6 vague human forms on Shenhua continent. They were much clearer and stronger than when they were in the space fragment. The 6 spirit bodies seemed to have noticed this, and they whispered something to each other. After a while, the 6 spirit bodies looked at the spirit fields again, and respectfully said something to Xiaogua. The Jade Archive Xiaohua saw that the matter was more or less settled, and sent them out of the space. The 6 tribe leaders fell into the space fragment, and the dim light and shadows returned. They didn't wait for Xiaogua to say anything, and floated into the scattered light and shadows. The light and shadows began to flicker, and in just a moment, a pair of light and shadows under the lead of the tribe leaders floated in front of Xiaohua. Chapter 45-32. Master. Little Fruit smiled and said, "You can take them into your home first, and then I'll take you to take their original bodies as well." Okay. Xiaohua shook the Kunlun mirror, and his mind swept through these light shadows. Although there were more than 10,000 spiritual bodies, they did not consume much spiritual power, and were taken into Shenhua continent in a moment. Soon after, the rest of the 9 plant races were also sucked into the space. Xiaohua was once again led by Xiaogua and Jima to a forest of giant trees. There were a lot of spirit grasses in this forest, but they didn't have any luster and looked listless. Presumably, without their spirit bodies, these spirit grasses had lost their essence. After Xiaohua took a look, the bodies of the 10 spiritual herbs on the 100 mu of land were also taken into the space. However, after taking these spiritual herbs, Xiaohua looked at the other spiritual herbs on the ground, and then looked at the 100 mu of empty space, and he fell into deep thought. Compared to the entire space fragment, the spiritual bodies that lived on the 100 mu of land were really a drop in the ocean. In other words, in this space fragment, the so-called spiritual bodies of herbs and wood were innumerable, and these spiritual bodies consumed a lot of heaven and earth spirit chi in this space fragment. If this space fragment was in the 10,000 demon realm, it would be fine, but this fragment was in the meteor belt. Although there were realm storms in the meteor belt, there would be replenishment of heaven and earth spirit chi, but it was still limited. The reason why the space fragment in the immortal realm that Xiaohua first set foot in was torn apart was because the space exit had been suppressed for a long time, and the expansion was unstoppable. On the other hand, it had something to do with the lack of immortal chi. Now, the space fragment in the 10,000 demon realm was showing signs of heaven and earth spirit chi drying up. If these spiritual bodies did not have other opportunities, they would disappear along with the heaven and earth spirit chi. Instead of letting these spiritual bodies disappear, it was better to let them move to Shenhua continent. At that thought, Xiaohua transformed back into a jade archive and landed on the Shenhua continent. At that moment, the 150,000 spirit bodies were excitedly staying in their main bodies, desperately absorbing the abundant heaven and earth spirit light that was of a higher grade than the heaven and earth spirit energy. All of them had long transformed into human forms. Jade Archive Xiaohua used his divine ability to imprint his will into the minds of these spirit bodies. These spirit bodies went crazy and were as excited as Xiaogua. After being sent out of the space by Jade Archive Xiaohua, they went towards the spatial fragment. Master. Looking at the many spirits frantically rushing away, even Xiaogua was stupefied. He calmed himself down, and looking up at Xiaohua with extreme worship, he said, "You're really amazing." This lowly one had to spend a lot of effort before they finally allowed this lowly one to see their clan leader. Only when this lowly one's mouth was parched did those clan leaders agree to come and take a look. Master only said a few words and it made them so crazy. "This little one really admires you." Hee hee. Xiaohua laughed. He was really proud in his heart. He had done many things like plundering, but this was the first time he had done something like tricking a spirit body. He didn't expect Xiaogua to be so effective. And when he acted, it was even scarier. Father. At this moment, a slightly panicked voice came from afar. In midair, Xiao Huang's figure was flying over like the wind. Behind him, Xiao He was following closely. The 2 little ones' faces were somewhat nervous. Looking behind the two little ones, an earthen yellow spirit body that was several hundred feet in size was chasing after them. This spirit body was like a mountain. It didn't have any hands or feet. It flew in mid-air like a rolling ball. The air around the spirit body surged, setting off a series of whirlwinds. These whirlwinds were like raging waves that pounced on Xiao Huang. The earthen yellow spirit body emitted a very strange aura. It was very dignified, but it didn't have enough power. When it landed on Xiao Hua, it didn't attract too much attention. Xiao Hua frowned. His divine sense condensed like a hammer. Hong! It smashed on top of the earthen yellow spirit body. The earthen yellow spirit body spun in the air and actually stopped there. A burst of obscure fluctuations came over. These fluctuations were mixed with some vibrating sounds like pines. Master! Hearing this, Xiaogua hurriedly said, "This spirit body asked who Master was and why you blocked it." At this moment, Xiao Huang had already flown to Xiao Hua's side. He looked very courageous. He turned his head and his big tail proudly wagged behind him. He shouted, come over if you have the ability." Xiao Hua frowned and said, "Xiao Huang, what's going on?" Xiao Huang didn't dare to be negligent. He hurriedly replied, "Father, the boy obeyed orders and went to look for the spirit body in this space." In this space, there were spirit bodies everywhere. However, they were all ordinary. The boy felt that these spirit bodies might not be of interest to his father, so he went to look for them in the distance. When the boy saw this big guy, he felt that he was more suitable to be his father's subordinate, so he told him about it. In the end, this guy didn't want to. If he didn't want to, then he didn't want to. The boy also didn't force him. When he was about to leave, the boy happened to see another spirit body with a good figure. "Speaking of this spirit body, father, Yuanya is really too boring. How can he be worthy of Sister Dai?" The boy thought that if he brought this spirit body home, he would first break them up. Xiao Hua didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He hurriedly interrupted Xiaogua's endless words and asked, "Get to the point. Why did this spirit body want to kill you?" The boy also doesn't know. Xiao Huang was also puzzled. When the boy saw this spirit body, he used his silver tongue and talked about our family's beauty, Yuanya's strength, and his outstanding strength. The boy didn't say anything clearly. He just told the spirit body that he would find her a good husband. This big guy flew into a rage and wanted to kill the boy without saying anything. Xiao Hua ignored Xiao Huang and turned to ask Xiao He, "Is Xiao Huang telling the truth?" "Yes, father," Xiao He replied concisely. And Xiao Hua nodded. He looked up at the spirit body and asked again, "What about that so-called good-figure spirit body?" "I don't know. He shouldn't be here." Xiao Huang hurriedly replied, "That spirit body is very shy." "Xiao Huang." Xiao Hua nodded and ordered, "Go, apologize to this spirit body. Say that you disturbed him and that it was a misunderstanding." "Why?" Xiao Huang raised his little face and said stubbornly, "How did I provoke him? I didn't touch a single hair on his body. I just talked to him, talked to another spirit body, and he wanted to kill me. He should apologize to me. Also, father, you are a Mahayana cultivator, a supreme existence in the 3 continents. Boy apologizing to him will make father lose face." Xiao Hua was somewhat displeased. He snorted and said, "Xiao Huang, father doesn't know what you did wrong. But don't forget, you were the one who spoke to him first. If you didn't speak, why would he want to kill you? How about this, Xiao Huang? Think about it carefully. If you think you're not wrong, father will kill this spirit body right now. I definitely won't let him go back alive. What do you think? As long as you pat your chest and say that you're not wrong." Xiao Huang hurriedly replied, "Father, you don't have to kill him, right? You just have to drive him away." "Yes," Xiao Hua said resolutely, "as long as you dare to pat your chest and say that you're not wrong." This. Xiao Huang hesitated. He raised his little paw and didn't lower it. In the end he said, "Father, this may be a misunderstanding." "What misunderstanding?" Xiao Hua asked. Boy didn't speak to that spirit body, and this big guy didn't have a particularly extreme reaction. It's just that the boy spoke too much, and this big guy became angry. Although Xiao Huang was a chatterbox, his thoughts were quite meticulous. He was still able to put himself in the other's shoes. "Then go and apologize." Xiaohua nodded. Although father needs face, father disdains this kind of meaningless face. Furthermore, father doesn't want you to become a hedonistic son of a rich family who bullies others. Yes, father. Goldie was quick to correct his mistake. He nodded and walked to a spot not far away. He faced the spiritual body and sang, "Big brother, I was rash earlier. If there's any trouble, please forgive me." As the saying goes, mountains don't move, water moves, and water doesn't move, demons move. We're all demons, and we see each other all the time. The mountains don't change, and the water flows forever. Roar! Without waiting for Xiao Huang to finish speaking, the mountain-like spirit body roared loudly. A fist-like thing flew out from the spirit body, streaking across the sky, and was about to smash Xiao Huang's body. Xiao Huang's figure flashed, and he was about to dodge. However, he thought of Xiao Hua's words, and his figure once again stood in the distance, not daring to move. Humph! Xiao Hua sneered. He grabbed again, and a huge golden hand that was several hundred zhong in size appeared out of thin air. Under the huge hand, not to mention the mountain-like spirit body that was several hundred zhong in size, even the space of several thousand zhong in size was imprisoned. Immediately, that huge hand slightly grabbed again. The mountain-like spirit body trembled and rapidly shrank. In a moment, it actually shrank to several hundred zhong in size. Woo-woo! Right at this moment, from the place where the mountain-like spirit body had flown over, another thin and tall spirit body arrived along with the wind. Before it could even fly in front of Xiao Hua, it immediately fell down in midair and babbled something from its mouth that no one knew what it was saying. Master! Xiao Gua hurriedly shouted. This spirit body said that this concubine is willing to serve this young master. Master, please spare her husband. Husband? Xiao Huang looked at this thin and tall spirit body in disbelief. He then looked at the spirit body that was several hundred zhong in size and said in shock, "This difference, isn't it too big?" Xiao Huang. Xiao Hua said coldly, "Did you see, father?" Xiao Huang hurriedly replied, "It's all this boy's fault. Boy didn't expect it to be like this." Xiao Gua. Xiao Hua nodded. "Explain to this spirit body." Yes. Xiao Gua hurriedly flew over and helped the thin and tall spirit body up. After a few words, the spirit body's head transformed into a rather beautiful woman's appearance. She looked at Xiao Hua, then at Xiao Huang, and nodded. Chapter 45-33. After hearing this, Xiao Gua respectfully says to Xiao Hua, "Master, she said she understood. Earlier little Huang spoke too fast so she didn't understand. I reckon her husband also didn't understand." N. Xiao Hua nods his head. With a wave of his big sleeve, that golden big hand immediately disappears. And that mountain-like spiritual body returns to its original size of several hundred zhong. At this moment, this mountain-like spiritual body doesn't dare to move carelessly. That huge spiritual body slowly rotates in mid-air. No one knows what it is thinking. That slender spiritual body flies to the mountain-like spiritual body's side and mutters a few words. The two spiritual bodies are about to turn around. Woo-woo. A gust of wind sounds. On the ground all around, spiritual bodies rush over like a flood from the space. The first one is the wood spiritual body who volunteered to go around looking for spiritual bodies. Master, master. Before the group of spiritual bodies even get close, they shout loudly, "Quickly open the door. We are waiting for you to come back." Unfortunately, Xiao Hua doesn't understand this voice. After Xiao Gua reminds him, Xiao Hua takes out Kunlun Mirror. With a wave of his hand, Kunlun Mirror transforms into a huge door in mid-air. Those spiritual bodies who come into contact with the light pillar above this door all disappear. Damn it! Xiao Hua looks at the seemingly endless amount of spiritual bodies among the green vines and huge trees. He unconsciously smiles bitterly. This movement is too big, isn't it? Even if I don't want to attract the attention of the two immortals, I'm afraid I can't do it now. Master. Suddenly, Xiao Gua says again, "That spiritual body wants to go to our house to take a look. What is he going to do?" Xiao Hua is somewhat impatient. He waves his hand and says, "Even if he can go in, I'm afraid it won't be easy to take his main body in." That. Xiao Gua says hesitantly, "This spiritual body seems to want to send his wife in, but his wife is not willing to leave him. He even scolded his wife. His wife is still crying over there. AI. Xiaohua hears and his heart is moved. He sighs and says, "Who says plants are heartless and mountains are heartless? No matter if it is a mountain or a plant, as long as it has a spirit, it will have feelings. The Tao of heaven allows them to have spirits. How can this Xiao not fulfill their wishes?" "Xiaogua, let them in." "Yes, master." Xiaogua happily agreed. The two spiritual bodies also fell into the Kunlun mirror's light pillar. Xiaohua's consciousness also followed in. As expected, of the two spirits that entered Shenhua continent, one transformed into an extremely burly man while the other transformed into a lithe woman. The two of them looked at each other with wild joy before looking around and whispering something to each other. The two spirits seemed to be quarreling, and then they hugged each other and cried. In the end, both of them made up their minds. Xiaohua understood a little. After waiting for a while, Xiaohua pulled them out of the space. The two spirits hurriedly kowtowed to Xiaohua and opened their mouths to say something. Xiaogua said from the side, "Master, one of them said that you must let her enter the space, and the other said that if he doesn't enter, she won't enter either." Although Xiaogua's words didn't distinguish between he and she, Xiaohua understood. Xiaohua smiled and said, "Tell them to go back first. In a while, I will go and see how big this big guy's body is. If it's possible, I will also take him." Okay. Xiaogua nodded and relayed Xiaohua's words. The two spirits left in high spirits. "You and the others go back first." Xiaohua's heart stirred. With a sweep of his consciousness, he put Xiaogua and the others into the space. Where did little Silver go? Why isn't he back yet? Xiaohua looked into the distance and was truly bewildered. He thought to himself, he won't be like little Huang and cause a huge mess, right? Hee hee. Just as Xiaohua was thinking this, he heard Fairy Xingyu's laughter in the air. "I knew it. What can happen to you? Sure enough, you're thinking about the spirits in this space fragment again. But Xiaohua, don't you think your ambition is a little too big?" Xiaohua smiled and looked at Fairy Xingyu, who had revealed herself in the void. He shrugged and said, "Senior, this junior's heart is very small. How can it be too big and too wild? One spirit body to refine one immortal pill. You have so many spirits. How many immortal pills do you need to refine? You don't know how to refine them now. You have so many spirits. Just to refine immortal pills for yourself in the future?" Fairy Xingyu looked at Xiaohua and asked, "Don't you think what you're doing is going against heaven and earth? Refine immortal pills." Hearing this, Xiaohua's heart stirred. He thought of the medicinal pill he had refined for Fairy Hongxia back in Million Meng Mountains. That flying shadow pill seemed to have been made with the help of spirit blood. That was just spirit blood, and the flying shadow pill had such a powerful effect. If he used spirit bodies to refine immortal pills, what grade would it be? Senior misunderstands this junior. Xiaohua smiled and explained the situation. Finally he said, "Since the spirit energy of heaven and earth in the space fragment is about to dry up, and this junior's Kunlun mirror needs spirit bodies to expand its spirit energy, why can't this junior take these spirits into the Kunlun mirror? If that's the case, this action of yours will benefit the spirit bodies." Fairy Xingyue seemed to be deep in thought. She did not ask Xiaohua how he could understand the words of the spirit bodies, nor did she ask what method he had used to coax these spirit bodies into the mirror. Instead, she said, "However, do you think you have the Dharma power to control so many spirit bodies in the Kunlun mirror?" "How would I know if I don't try?" Xiaohua retorted. "These spirits are going to die anyway. Don't tell me they'll die there? Humph, you're waiting for them to die before using their bodies, right?" Fairy Xingyu looked at Xiaohua confidently and asked. Xiaohua shrugged and said, "Senior, you can think whatever you want. Anyway, these spirits already believe this junior." What a glib tongue. Fairy Xingyu curled her lips and said, "Fairy Baihua was fooled like this back then. This is two different things." Xiaohua did not know whether to laugh or cry. "Forget it. Do whatever you want," Fairy Xingyu said. "Release the disciples of Zhai Xinglu from the Kunlun mirror." "Ah, why?" Xiaohua asked curiously. "Isn't there a meteor belt ahead? Isn't it not there yet?" At this point, Xiaohua seemed to have suddenly thought of something. He hurriedly covered his mouth and laughed. Haha, this junior understands. What do you understand? Fairy Xingyu said somewhat angrily. I'm not as despicable as you think. I'm just thinking that after the meteor belt, your Kunlun mirror can no longer be used. You have to send the disciples of Zhai Xing Lu out from this spatial fragment. I've never thought of letting them touch the spatial fragment of the 10,000 demon realm. Xiaohua smiled and raised his hand to point at the Kunlun mirror. A beam of light separated and the disciples of Zhai Xing Lu flew out from it. They all landed in the air. Xiaohua still said, Elder sister, this junior didn't say anything. This is all your own idea. Spirit bodies? Among the disciples of Zhai Xing Lu, there were naturally knowledgeable ones. When they saw the tide of spirit bodies pouring into Xiaohua's space, they could not help but cry out. Hee, these spirit bodies are not fated to be with you. Xiaohua said with a smile. There may be some spiritual herbs, spiritual fruits, and other things ahead. You can go ahead and take a look. At this point, Xiaohua knew that Fairy Xingyu had come here because she was attracted by the tide of spirit bodies. However, her original intention was to let the disciples of Zhai Xing Lu collect more spiritual herbs in this spatial fragment. Fairy Xingyu glared at Xiaohua and waved her hand. All of you, follow me. Yes, Palace Master. No one dared to be negligent and all answered respectfully. After the disciples of Zhai Xing Lu had left, Xiaohua looked at the spirit bodies that were still pouring in. He was really shocked and thought to himself, damn it, how many spirit bodies are there in this spatial fragment? I've already collected so many, but why can't I see an end to them? The 10 herb clans. How can they be more deceptive than Xiao Gua? After a full hour, the spirit bodies that were pouring in gradually decreased. Xiao Hua did not know how many spirit bodies he had collected. However, he knew very well that in today's Shanhua continent, the number of spirit bodies had long surpassed that of the human clan. It was just that these spirit bodies were confined in a certain area by him, and the human clan on Shanhua continent did not know about it at all. The spirit bodies of the 10,000 demon realm fragment had entered the spatial fragment, but their bodies were still in the spatial fragment. Xiao Hua did not know how the spirit bodies cultivated, and he did not dare to abandon the bodies of these spirit bodies. After waiting for another hour, when all the spirit bodies had entered the spatial fragment, Xiao Hua pointed at the Kunlun mirror again. The Kunlun mirror flew into the air. As Xiao Hua's hands moved, hundreds of thick crystal lights fell into the spatial fragment like thunderbolts. The entire Kunlun mirror began to roar and gradually expanded. In less than half a cup of tea's time, the Kunlun mirror had turned into 100 miles in size. Then, Xiao Hua's figure flashed and landed on the Kunlun mirror. The Kunlun mirror emitted a huge beam of light that shone on the ground and landed between the green vines and the giant trees. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. The spiritual herbs and trees that had lost their essence rushed into the Kunlun mirror. Then, Xiao Hua activated the Kunlun mirror to check the entire spatial fragment. This spatial fragment was not big, but it was definitely not small either. It had a radius of millions of miles. Xiao Hua spent several days before he finally managed to absorb the true bodies of those spiritual bodies into his body. During the collection process, Xiao Hua naturally rolled his eyes at Fairy Xingyu. When the disciples of the scholarly cultivator families and Zhai Xing Lu saw how powerful Xiao Hua's magic treasure was, they respectfully avoided him, but there were also envious gazes. While collecting the bodies of the spiritual herbs, Xiao Hua naturally paid attention to Little Silver's whereabouts. However, when Xiao Hua collected all the spiritual herbs, he did not see Little Silver. Strange. Xiao Hua was even more puzzled. Did Little Silver encounter some danger? However, I don't seem to have seen any spirit body above 5th grade in this spatial fragment. With Little Silver's strength, how could he be in danger? After collecting the Kunlun mirror, Xiao Hua urged his figure to check on Suji's injuries. After all, after falling into the spatial fragment, Suji did not come down from the flying boat. Xiao Hua had a bad feeling in his heart. But at that moment, Xiao Hua suddenly thought of the mountain-like spirit body. Xiao Hua hurriedly asked Little Black where the spirit body was and urged his figure to come to a rare spirit mountain. Chapter 45-35. The spirit mountain had a radius of more than 10 miles and was shaped like a heart. On one side of the heart-shaped spirit mountain, there was a green vine covering it. Seeing Xiao Hua descend, The spirit stone rumbled a few times and the mountain-like spirit body walked out. At the same time, the green vine swayed and shined brightly like starlight. The slender spirit body also walked out from the green vine. Xiaohua looked at the green vine and then at the spirit mountain. He frowned. There was no problem for him to put the green vine into the space, but it was a little troublesome to collect the spirit stone. It was not that Xiaohua could not collect the spirit mountain that was more than 10 miles in size, but this spirit mountain was originally a part of the space fragment. Unlike the Tongtian Peak or the Five Elements magnetic force, Xiaohua did not know where to collect it, let alone how to collect it without destroying the entire space fragment. After all, there were more spirits on the space fragment that were unwilling to enter the space. Xiaohua thought for a moment and shook the Kunlun mirror, wanting to release Xiao Gua. However, with a flash of light, Xiaohua changed Xiao Gua to Xiao He. After all, Fairy Xingyu had found Xiao Gua in the Tianfu abode. If she saw Xiao Gua here, she would suspect him for no reason. Xiao He told him about Xiao Hua's misgivings. The two spirits seemed to have already discussed it. Although Qing Man's spirit looked desolate, she couldn't resist the urging of the spirit of Spirited Mountain. She flew to Xiao Hua and bowed. Xiao Hua thought for a moment and said to Xiao He, I don't understand how these spirits cultivate. Ask the spirit of the Spirit Mountain. The spirits of the plants can't leave their bodies for the time being. As the spirit of the mountain stone, can he leave? If he can also enter the Kunlun mirror. Yes, father. Xiao He agreed, then asked the spirit body. Sure enough, the spirit body was trembling. Then, it said a few words to Xiao He. Xiao He didn't say anything to Xiao Hua, so it agreed a few more times. Then, the spirit body suddenly turned into a stone pillar, kneeled in front of Xiao Hua, and muttered something. Haha, get up. Xiao Hua raised his hand and helped the spirit up. He asked Xiao He, what did you say to him? Father. Little Black answered. This spirit body said that he doesn't know how to grow spirit herbs and is afraid that father will dislike him, so he doesn't dare to enter the Kunlun mirror. The boy told him that father is the most broad-minded. He doesn't need him to plant any spiritual herbs. As long as he doesn't separate him from his wife, father will definitely agree. Good. Xiao Hua nodded. Your words are father's words. You can go back first. As he spoke, Xiao Hua shook the Kunlun mirror and put Little Black away. He was going to take in the two spiritual bodies. At this time, a cracking sound suddenly came from the bottom of the spiritual mountain. Then, a wave more powerful than a tsunami rushed out from the depths of the spiritual mountain and spread towards the spatial fragment. At the same time, a layer of light that was almost visible to the naked eye swept across the ground faster than the wave. Wherever the light passed, the colors seemed to fade. Everywhere the light passed, faint cracks appeared on the ground. Chirp, 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 chirp. There was a panicked sound in the air, and Little Silver's figure was thrown out like a rock in this wave. Xiao Hua was alarmed and raised his hand to grab it. Boom! A golden palm several li wide sealed off the source of Little Silver's voice. But before Xiao Hua could activate his magic power, an inexplicable rule was born. Boom! Xiao Hua's big hand was shattered. Xiao Hua was blank. He activated his magic power again, and the big hand was born again. Boom! The rule was born again, and Xiao Hua's big hand was shattered again. Not good. Xiao Hua turned pale with fright. He activated his magic power 9 times in a row, and the big hand was shattered 9 times. At that moment, Little Silver's figure was revealed. There was something the size of a fist in his mouth, and his entire body was mottled in the air. His little bright silver tail twitched weakly in the air, and it looked like it had actually been cut into several pieces. Seeing this, how could Xiao Hua not know that Little Silver had gotten into big trouble? With a whoosh, he flew into the space where Little Silver was. But before he could land, a tremendous and unrivaled will of heaven and earth appeared in the air to block Xiao Hua. Layers of distinct black and white spatial ripples appeared in the area several li around Little Silver like fish swimming in water. Xiao Hua was burning with anxiety. He was about to activate his divine ability to rescue Little Silver, but when he saw so many black and white spatial ripples, his heart couldn't help but stir. Space? Xiao Hua then raised his hand and pointed at the Kunlun mirror. Swish! A beam of light fell and covered the space where Little Silver was. Boom, boom, boom. Wherever the beam of light passed, all the spatial ripples disappeared. That unrivaled will of heaven and earth became even more valiant, as if it was resisting space. Rumble! Very strangely, tiny thunderbolts appeared on the edge of the Kunlun mirror's beam of light, and it started to collapse. Xiaohua's eyes swiveled rapidly. After several breaths, he tried to release his mind and follow the beam of light. Strangely, wherever his mind passed, the thunderbolts disappeared and the beam of light grew brighter and brighter. A space passage gradually appeared around Little Silver. When the beam of light completely enveloped Little Silver, his figure was also revealed. Only then did Xiaohua see that what Little Silver was holding in his mouth was something that looked like a gallbladder. This thing was covered in hair-thin cracks that went deep into its core. However, from these cracks, thousands of tiny rays of light flickered. These tiny rays of light came from a crystal grain that was almost invisible to the naked eye at the core of the gallbladder. The will of heaven and earth and the indescribable nomological laws came from this crystal grain. It was very clear that the will of heaven and earth and the nomological laws weren't something that the Kunlun mirror's beam of light could resist. But when they came into contact with Xiaohua's mind, their strong sense of resistance weakened. "Master, hurry!" Little Silver could finally speak and he cried out in his heart, "This is a good thing, hurry up and put it away." Xiaohua didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He had wanted Little Silver to find some good things, but he hadn't wanted Little Silver to make such a big fuss. "Master." Seeing Xiaohua hesitate, Little Silver urged, "My father said that if a man wants to do something, he should do it big. There's nothing in this space that's worthy of this little one's hand. Only this thing can be seen in this little one's eyes." "Hee, okay." Seeing that Little Silver was as greedy as he was and as arrogant as Little Yellow, Xiaohua smiled and was about to put it away with his mind. But just then, two tyrannical thoughts swept over from afar, and Fairy Xingyu cried out in surprise, Is this a spirit gallbladder?" "This. I've never seen or heard of it before." Suji's tired voice rang out. After a few breaths, two silhouettes with silver light stepped out of the spatial ripples. It was Fairy Xingyu and Suji. At that moment, Suji was already able to reveal his human form, but the silver light had fused with the armor from earlier to protect his entire body. His head was still covered by the faint silver light, and his appearance couldn't be seen. This faint silver light gave off boundless majesty. It wasn't just Little Silver and the two spirits, but even Xiaohua felt an indescribable pressure. "Senior," Xiaohua hurriedly asked, "can you still maintain your physical body?" I should be able to last until we reach the Starry Sky Maze." Suji nodded in reply, his expression hidden. "This spirit-seeking mouse is your spirit pet?" "Yes, senior," Xiaohua said with a smile. "When this junior sent the star-picking tower disciples out just now, I also let him out in passing, wanting him to find a treasure for this junior. Who would have thought that he would actually find this thing? I just don't know. What is this spirit gallbladder?" Spirit gallbladder, as the name implies, is the gallbladder of the spiritual world. Fairy Xingyu's voice was full of envy. Looking at the fist-sized gallbladder, she explained, "It is the foundation of the spirit chi world. The spirit chi world is born from the spirit gallbladder, and the spirit gallbladder also dies when the spirit chi world is annihilated." "Xiaohua, you actually got this thing. I don't know if your luck is good or bad." "Oh, what does senior mean?" Xiaohua seemed to understand something. He looked at Fairy Xingyu with a smile and said, "This junior's luck has always been good." "Of course your luck is good." Fairy Xingyu nodded and said, "We thought this fragment was a corner of the 10,000 demon realm. But I was wrong. This fragment should be a fragment of a world parallel to the 10,000 demon realm. And it definitely isn't the 10,000 demon realm, because the spirit gallbladder of the 10,000 demon realm is in the 10,000 demon realm. It can't be in this fragment. However, your luck doesn't seem to be as good as you think. Although this fragment is the core of a world, this world has collapsed. If it weren't for a coincidence, this space fragment wouldn't exist here. It would have been annihilated long ago. Of course, since the spirit gallbladder has been taken away by you, this space fragment will no longer have spirit chi. The fragment will eventually become fragments and won't exist for long. As for this spirit gallbladder, it is on the verge of annihilation. Even if you get it, it will be meaningless to you. Those spirit bodies can provide spirit chi in your Kunlun Wonderland and maintain it, but this spirit gallbladder, is not something that your Kunlun wonderland can nourish. Xiaohua frowned and said, even if I put this spirit gallbladder back now, it probably won't work, right? Of course. Fairy Xingyu nodded. If the spirit gallbladder wasn't about to be annihilated and the core of this world was about to shatter, it would be absolutely impossible for your spirit pet to take the spirit gallbladder out of the core of the fragment. What about the spirit bodies on this space fragment? Xiaohua asked hurriedly. What will happen to them? Fairy Xingyu glanced at Xiaohua and asked, do you still need to ask? Well, this junior understands. Xiaohua nodded and asked again. Senior, this spirit body is the spirit of this spirit mountain. Do you have the means to pull this spirit mountain out? This junior can take this spirit mountain into the Kunlun mirror. Chapter 45-36. That's not a problem. Suji nodded. I can pull this spirit stone out of the ground. Why do you need this spirit mountain? Fairy Xingyu waved her hand. When the spirit gall was still around, this spirit mountain was useful to the spirit body. Now that the spirit gall is gone, this spirit mountain is just a shell. You just need to put it in the Kunlun immortal realm, and then find a stone that can be put in somewhere else. Actually, to be honest, this spirit body is a mountain spirit and is more useful than those plant spirits. If you put it in the Kunlun immortal realm, it will be of great use to the Kunlun mirror. This junior understands. Relieved, Xiaohua then turned to Little Silver and said, release the spirit guts and ask this spirit body if it can understand what you're saying. Yes, my lord. Little Silver obediently released the spirit gall. It flew out of Little Silver's mouth and floated in the air. Layers of dark green and withered yellow intertwined. Amidst the light and shadow, the images of different interfaces appeared one after another, but they disappeared as soon as they fell into the space. Seeing that Xiaohua didn't say anything, Little Silver released the spirit gall and flew over to whisper in front of the mountain-like spirit body. Fairy Xingyu couldn't help frowning again. She was very surprised by Xiaohua's elusive methods. After a while, Little Silver replied, my lord, he doesn't know what you're talking about, but I've already told him. Xiaohua nodded. What does he mean? Xiaohua nodded slightly and asked again. Oh, I understand. Little Silver was a little reserved in front of Xiaohua. He didn't understand what Xiaohua meant at first, but when Xiaohua asked, he immediately nodded and whispered a few more words to the mountain-like spirit body. Boom, boom, boom. The mountain-like spirit body kowtowed a few times at Xiaohua before its huge body rolled away. At the same time, the slender spirit body also hurriedly flew away. Little Silver? Xiaohua asked curiously. Why did he run away? Didn't you tell him not to put the spirit mountain into the Kunlun mirror? I didn't. Little Silver chuckled and said, I told him that this space is about to be finished. If he wants to live, it's better for him to hide in Daddy's Kunlun mirror. Furthermore, this lowly one also told him that if he had any close neighbors, he should inform them as well. Don't regret it later. Haha. Xiaohua laughed. You're really good, you're as good as your father. Of course. Little Silver hurriedly replied. Although Daddy isn't this little one's biological son, this little one grew up with Daddy and called you mother for so many years, how could this little one not do the same to Daddy? Where did the mountain spirit go? Suji was confused. Senior, you'll know soon enough. Xiaohua pretended to be mysterious. As expected, in less than half a cup of tea's time, the entire space began to tremble. Hundreds of mountain spirits flew out from the ground. The largest of these mountain spirits were several thousand meters tall, and the smallest were several dozen meters tall. They all flew around the spirit gallbladder and let out a whining sound. Swish, swish, swish. After the mountain spirits, all kinds of spirits actually flew over. They all fell down in front of the familiar fluctuations and aura of the spirit gallbladder. In less than half a cup of tea's time, the entire world was filled with many spirits. These spirits were colorful, but they hadn't solidified yet, and their strength was too shallow. Seeing this, how could Suji not know what was going to happen? He looked at Xiaohua, not knowing what to say. Even Fairy Xingyu had a sneer on her face as she reminded Xiaohua. Xiaohua, the Confucian cultivators of the hidden immortal continent have a saying, a man whose heart is not content is like a snake trying to swallow an elephant. You've already collected so many spirits. It's enough for your Kunlun wonderland. These spirits, are all the spirits of this space. You have to think about it carefully. They might destroy your Kunlun mirror. Xiaohua replied without hesitation. Senior, this junior knows very well. Although this junior's heart aches for my Kunlun mirror, I don't want the Kunlun Wonderland to be occupied by these spirits. However, since these spirits have become spirits, they have a life. If this junior doesn't collect them into the Kunlun mirror, they will die. When this junior thinks that a world bigger than the 3 continents is only so big now, and so many spirits have already perished, this junior's heart aches. If this junior didn't know, it would have been fine. But now that this junior knows that it can save their lives, not to mention the Kunlun mirror, even if this junior risks my own life, I will give it a try. After all, to this junior, it's just a risk, but to them, it's the hope of survival. Hiss. Fairy Xingyu was greatly moved, but Suji wasn't too surprised. He just looked at the spirits in the sky indifferently and pondered. Xiaohua. Fairy Xingyu said in a low voice, I can't tell if you're sincere or not. If you're sincere, you're definitely the most loving person in the immortal world. But if you're not sincere, you're the most greedy hypocrite in the world. What if it's half true and half false? Xiaohua didn't care about what others said and asked with a smile. Fairy Xingyu was stunned. After a moment, she smiled and said, even if it's half true and half false, you can still become a Buddha. Namo Maitreya Buddha. Xiaohua smiled slightly, put his palms together, and chanted the name of Buddha. Ah! Fairy Xingyu was slightly stunned. Then she covered her mouth and laughed. She also put her palms together and chanted the name of Buddha. Namo Amitabha. I'm here to pay my respects. Ha ha ha. Xiaohua didn't understand at first, but after a moment, he laughed again and asked, Senior, are you a Buddhist, a Taoist, or a Confucian cultivator? I am whatever you are. Fairy Xingyu said, pretending to be profound. Suji ignored the two of them. He thought for a moment and said seriously, Xiaohua, it's already good that you have a heart of universal love. However, I also think that you should act according to your ability. How about this? Xingyue and I will help you collect these spirits, and then let the disciples of Zhai Xinglu help you collect the bodies of these spirits. As for the bodies of the mountain rock spirits, it's fine if you don't collect them. After all, the bodies of the mountain rock spirits are illusions in the Kunlun Wonderland. If you really take their bodies in, it will have a great impact on the entire Wonderland. Xiaohua looked at Suji. Although he couldn't see his appearance clearly, Xiaohua could believe that Suji was warm-hearted. He nodded fiercely and said, Thank you, Senior. This is what I should do. Suji replied, It's a pity that I haven't activated my fairy artifact, nor do I have a spatial fairy artifact. Otherwise, I would have collected them directly. These are all fresh lives. I was lucky, and so were the two seniors. This is all arranged by the heavens. The way of heaven must be watching our merits. Xiaohua said emotionally. Merits are the business of the Buddhist sect. It has nothing to do with my Taoist sect. Suji replied faintly, I just want to live up to my conscience. Senior, it's enough that you have this thought. Xiaohua looked at Fairy Xingyu and asked Suji, Senior, how should we do it? Suji also looked at Fairy Xingyu and said, Xingyu, I'm not very familiar with this spiritual gallbladder. How do you think we should deal with it? Fairy Xingyu seemed to have thought about it a long time ago. She said, Xiaohua, try putting this spiritual gallbladder into the Kunlun mirror first. I can't guarantee that the Kunlun mirror can hold this thing of heaven and earth. Xiaohua nodded and activated the Kunlun mirror. As the beam of light shone brightly, his mind also rolled up the spiritual gallbladder. Buzz! The spiritual gallbladder slowly moved. At this time, the spiritual gallbladder was different from the one in Little Silver's mouth. Every time the spiritual gallbladder moved an inch, the space collapsed an inch, and the will of heaven and earth moved an inch. As the spiritual gallbladder moved, not only did the light beam of the Kunlun mirror shake, but the Kunlun mirror itself also shook violently. Marks and cracks appeared on the surface of the mirror. Suji raised his hand and was pulled back by Fairy Xingyu again. She whispered, Suji, this depends on how well Xiaohua can control the Kunlun mirror. We can't interfere. Suji naturally understood, but he was really worried about Xiaohua. Xiao Hua was confident that he could put this spiritual gallbladder into his space. However, in front of these two immortals, he was afraid that he would reveal the flaws of his space. Therefore, he had to carefully activate his mind and look for an opportunity. Seeing that the spiritual gallbladder was getting closer to the Kunlun mirror, the Kunlun mirror was getting more and more shattered. It couldn't hold on at all. Xiao Hua simply gritted his teeth and shouted, "Keep!" The Kunlun mirror shone brightly, and the beam of light fell like a waterfall. The moment the beam of light fell, the spiritual gallbladder suddenly disappeared. It had been taken into Xiao Hua's space. When the spiritual gallbladder entered the space, it didn't fall into the Shenhua continent like the other spiritual bodies. Instead, it floated in the void. Crack! As soon as the spiritual gallbladder settled down, its shell, which was already full of cracks, cracked and shattered. Crystal grains, which were almost invisible to the naked eye, appeared. Then, a powerful will of heaven and earth emerged from these crystal grains and rushed into the void. This will of heaven and earth was even stronger than when the spiritual gallbladder had moved. The void was completely messed up. Layers of tiny whirlpools rushed toward the Shenhua continent and the other spaces with this will of heaven and earth. Boom! It seemed that the distance between this crystal grain and the other spaces was different. However, the will of heaven and earth crashed into all the spaces at the same time. A deafening roar resounded in the void, causing the entire space to tremble. Then, dozens of similar wills of heaven and earth emerged from the various spaces. They quickly smoothed out the whirlpools of space and went back into the crystal grain. Chirp, chirp, chirp. Strange explosive sounds were produced around the crystal grain. Lights of various colors were also produced in the entire void. After a while, all the lights rushed into the crystal grain from all directions. Boom! An even louder explosion was produced from the crystal grain. The space around the crystal grain instantly exploded and expanded wildly. The nearby space, which had not matured, was enveloped by this explosion. That space had just entered the crystal grain. Whoosh! A hurricane appeared around this space. A powerful suction force came out of this space and passed through the hurricane to land on the Shenhua continent. The spiritual bodies and their real bodies that Xiao Hua had already taken into the Shenhua continent were all sucked into this space in a flash. As the spiritual bodies entered this space, it became bigger and bigger. It grew until it was tens of millions of miles in size before it slowly stopped. A continent that looked like a spatial fragment was already taking shape. Chapter 45-37. Naturally, the brilliance could not stop Su Ji and Fairy Xing Yu's thoughts. Although they were a little surprised that the spiritual gall would suddenly disappear when it was still some distance away from the Kunlun mirror, they were not personally controlling the Kunlun mirror after all, so they could not say anything. Seeing that the Kunlun mirror had taken the spiritual gall, Su Ji's heart was immediately relieved. He said loudly, "Xiao Hua, quickly take a look at the Kunlun Wonderland." "Yes, Senior." Xiao Hua's mind took back the spiritual gall and immediately shook the Kunlun mirror. The Kunlun mirror shook violently in the air as if it was ill. At this time, after listening to Su Ji's words, Xiao Hua agreed and took the opportunity to enter the space. Sure enough, Xiao Hua's mind entered the space and instantly noticed the changes in the space. He fell into a new space and turned into Jade Archive Xiao Hua. He closed his eyes slightly and felt the spiritual energy between heaven and earth that was different from that of Shenhua continent. He said to himself, "This space is born from the spiritual gall, and it is also the place where the spirits live. Let's call it the spiritual realm. I just don't know what's the difference between this spiritual realm and the 10,000 demon realm?" Jade Archive Xiao Hua stood in the air and felt the spiritual energy of heaven and earth in the spiritual realm becoming more and more abundant. He looked at the many spirits happily absorbing the spiritual energy with the help of their bodies. A harmonious and peaceful aura emanated from Jade Archive Xiao Hua and slowly filled the entire spiritual realm. After a while, Jade Archive Xiao Hua came out of the spiritual realm. Xiao Hua raised his hand and the aura of the spiritual realm fell on the Kunlun mirror. The shaking of the Kunlun mirror slowly stopped. Xiao Hua said with a smile on his face, "Senior, fortunately, I didn't disappoint you. The spiritual gall has stabilized in the Kunlun Wonderland, and it seems that there are changes that I don't know about. If you want to take it out now, you can't." "Good." Su Ji clapped his hands and said, "This is good. With the spiritual gall, these spirits in the lost realm will have a good place to go." Xianxia, take out the Kunlun mirror. Xingyue and I will help you. Haha, many thanks, seniors. Xianxia laughed heartily and waved his hand again. The Kunlun mirror rushed into the air and expanded to several kilometers in size. While Xianxia was activating the Kunlun mirror, Fairy Xingyu said a few words. However, as her voice fell, it turned into a white crane in mid-air. Fairy Xingyu raised her hand and tapped the top of the white crane's head. A red light appeared on the top of the white crane's head. The white crane spread its wings and let out a clear cry. It soared into the sky and disappeared in a moment. Boom boom boom. As Su Ji's hands moved, a huge crystal light suddenly appeared in the void. At the center of the crystal light, there were wisps of thin silver. Wang wang wang. Crystal light appeared around the Kunlun mirror and rushed into it. The Kunlun mirror let out a buzzing sound and rapidly expanded. In a few breaths of time, it was hundreds of miles wide. Fairy Xingyue smiled and said, "I'll help you too." As her voice fell, Fairy Xingyue formed a seal with both hands. A crescent moon rushed toward the surface of the Kunlun mirror like a sickle, and a cluster of starlight followed behind the crescent moon unhurriedly. Puff puff. The crescent moon and starlight crashed into the Kunlun mirror. Woo woo. A huge whirlpool appeared on the surface of the Kunlun mirror. The whirlpool gradually filled the entire surface of the mirror. A powerful suction force was generated from the whirlpool, covering all the spiritual bodies within several hundred miles. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. There was no suspense at all. One by one, the spirits crashed into the vortex. Xianxia did not dare to be negligent. He hurriedly activated the Kunlun mirror to absorb the spirits that rushed into the Kunlun wonderland. Sure enough, as Fairy Xingyue had said, in just a moment, the Kunlun mirror began to shake. A large number of spirits rushed in, causing a change in the Kunlun wonderland. Xianxia was anxious. He hurriedly released his mind and created another vortex at the vortex of the Kunlun mirror, drawing these spirits into the spiritual realm of the space. Fortunately, these spirits were somewhat similar to the vengeful spirits that Xianxia had collected in the hidden Immortal continent. Although Xianxia was a little caught off guard, he was not flustered. At first, he was unfamiliar with it, but in a moment, he was familiar with it. Seeing that the spirit bodies nearby had been collected, Su Ji called out again, "Xianxia, you come with us and quickly collect all the spirit bodies in this spatial fragment. Who knows when a spatial fragment that has lost its spiritual gall will shatter?" Xiaohua's spirit soared as he rushed into the air and said, "Today, being able to join hands with the two seniors is the happiest thing in my life." With the help of the two immortals, Su Ji and Fairy Xingyue, although the number of spirits absorbed into the spiritual realm this time was 100 times more than before, the speed was not slow. In particular, Xiaohua had deliberately released the aura of the spiritual realm in the Kunlun mirror. All the spirits, even some beast spirits, did not resist and were obediently absorbed into Xiaohua's space. While Xiaohua and the others were busy, the disciples of Zhai Xinglu were not idle either. They flew to different parts of the space fragment, collected all the spirits, and handed them to Xiaohua in the end. The disciples of Zhai Xinglu moved. When the disciples of the Confucian family heard the news, they also came to help. Not to mention that sending all the spirits in a space into the Kunlun mirror was a grand occasion in their lives. Even if they helped these spirits who were on the verge of death escape, it was a merit that they were willing to do. The disciples of the aristocratic families of Confucian cultivators might not know how Xing cultivated, but the disciples of the four aristocratic families, Dongfang Yushan, Shimen Hengyue, Nangong Pingping, and Baiming Qi Han, had vaguely learned some secrets from their elders. They knew very well how rare the merit of teaching was. They also knew that this kind of merit might not be comparable to the merit of teaching, but after all, this was a life-saving action. These orthodox disciples of Confucian cultivators were also very willing to do it. Therefore, no one was slacking off, and no one was concealing anything. After Xiaohua, Su Ji, and Fairy Xingyu collected the countless spirits, the disciples of Zhai Xinglu and the disciples of Zhai Xinglu also brought over the spirit wood and other spirit materials they had collected. Xiaohua accepted them with a smile. His impression of the four aristocratic families had changed a little. After busying themselves, Su Ji and Fairy Xingyu led the disciples back to the flying boat. Xiaohua took Little Silver and flew around the space fragment again. After a thorough inspection, He returned to the flying boat with relief. The flying boat was now stopped in the air. Above them was a meteor belt, and there were more starlight fragments than before. When Xiaohua flew back, Fairy Xingyu was frowning and looking at the starry sky, as if she was having a hard time deciding. Xiaohua had already said that he would leave the choice to Fairy Xingyu this time. He didn't want to investigate, but when he thought about how Fairy Xingyu was just a softie at heart, he rolled his eyes and opened his delusion breaker magic eye again. Sure enough, in his magic eye, the boundary storms in the starry sky were very complicated. There were no obvious signs of safety in the storms near each space fragment. Xiaohua looked at them for a moment, then asked in a low voice, "Senior, this meteor belt is really hard to choose. Do you have any good suggestions? Didn't you find anything special?" Fairy Xingyu didn't answer, but asked another question instead. Xiaohua was puzzled. He shook his head and said, "I didn't find anything special. I just found that the boundary storms near these space fragments are similar. It seems that it won't be easy to choose any of them. If that's the case, why should I worry? I just need to pick one at random." Fairy Xingyu rolled her eyes at Xiaohua. "What I'm worried about now is how to find the space fragment with the transmission channel in this starry sky." Ah! Xiaohua was puzzled. He looked at the meteor belt again and asked, "Senior, do you mean that there might be a space fragment in this starry sky that can directly pass through the meteor belt?" "Yes." Fairy Xingyu nodded and said, "We have encountered this starry sky several times before. There were 2 times when we were lucky enough to find the space fragment that could directly pass through the meteor belt. However, those 2 times were by chance. It seems that there is nothing special about this space fragment." Xiaohua thought for a moment, then nodded and said, "If that's the case, I'll take another look and see if I can help you. If you can really find it, I'll really admire you." Fairy Xingyu said in disbelief. She simply leaned close to Su Ji and sat cross-legged on the flying boat. At this time, the disciples of Zhai Xinglu were sitting around Su Ji and Fairy Xingyu. The disciples of the Confucian aristocratic family were standing on the periphery. The celestial imperial flying boat was huge, so it didn't seem crowded even with tens of thousands of people standing there. Xiaohua opened his Dharma eye again and carefully looked at the space fragment. Since he already knew that he was looking for a space passage, he naturally didn't need to pay attention to the realm storm. He spent a full 2 hours looking at the space fragments near him one by one. A smile appeared at the corners of his mouth. These space fragments all had different splendors and colors. However, if there were only black and white splendors, there were 4 more in this starry sky. Of course, the black and white splendors in these 4 space fragments were very obscure. It was not easy to identify which one was the transmission passage. However, when he carefully looked at the realm storm around these 4 space fragments, Xiaohua keenly saw that one of the realm storms on the left had condensed into the shape of a vortex. If there was no accident, there should be a passage in this space fragment that led to the other side of the meteor belt. Xiaohua didn't say it out loud. Instead, he asked respectfully, "Senior, have you found anything?" "I think 3 of them are more likely to be found." Fairy Xingyu didn't stand on ceremony. She pointed to 3 starlights of different shapes and said, "If you are not confident, the 3 of us will each lead 3 groups of disciples into these 3 space fragments." Xiaohua naturally knew that this was the method that Fairy Xingyu had used previously. He smiled and said, "Senior, I think that fragment is more interesting." "Oh, why?" Fairy Xingyu looked at it for a moment. There was also a faint silver light mixed with starlight between her eyebrows. Then, she asked in confusion. Xiaohua naturally wouldn't answer truthfully. He only smiled and said, "Because the lines of that space fragment are more special." When Fairy Xingyu heard this, she couldn't help but take another look. The space fragment that originally didn't have any special features was really special when Fairy Xingyu looked at it carefully. It actually looked like Chapter 45-38. Bah! Fairy Xingyu spat at Xiaohua and said, "Why are all men so filthy?" "Ah?" Xiaohua was just saying it casually. How could he see anything? He did not know the origin of this filthy thought. However, he was only surprised for a moment before he smiled and said, "Senior's heart doesn't seem to be pure. What I said doesn't seem to be what you think." Forget it." Fairy Xingyu waved her hand and asked Su Ji, "What do you think?" Listen to Xiaohua. Su Ji seemed to have great confidence in Xiaohua. All right then. Fairy Xingyu did not refute. She raised her hand and took out another astrolabe from her bosom and handed it to Xiaohua. Xiaohua, if you are right, the exit of this transmission channel is opposite the meteor belt. However, the transmission channel in the void fragment is natural and the direction of transmission is changeable. When we get there, we may not be in the same place. This is a magic treasure refined by Su Ji. It can be activated with a thunderbolt. Take it. When you get there, you can find us. Okay. Xiaohua took the astrolabe and carefully put it away. I understand. Then Fairy Xingyu looked at the flying boat under her feet and said, if it is a transmission channel, I'm afraid this immortal imperial equipment can no longer be used. If the transmission channel inside is not stable, the immortal imperial equipment of the heavenly court will crash the transmission channel. After saying that, Fairy Xingyu said loudly, disciples, listen to my command. Get off the flying boat and get into formation. Yes. The disciples of Zhai Xing Lu answered and got off the flying boat. The disciples of the aristocratic families did not dare to delay and hurriedly flew off the flying boat. Most of the disciples of the aristocratic families lined up. Dongfang Yushan and a dozen other people activated their secret techniques at the same time. A dozen strange multicolored lights fell on the flying boat. The flying boat gradually shrank to the size of a palm. Dongfang Yushan raised his hand and stuffed it into his bosom. Fairy Xingyu did not talk nonsense. Just like before, she raised her hand and took out the astrolabe. Groups of flying birds flew out of the astrolabe again and flew toward the spatial fragment that Xiaohua had pointed out. I'll take the lead. Su Ji did not wait for Xiaohua to speak. He floated up and flew out on the flying birds. Xiaohua touched his nose and said with a smile, since Senior is taking the lead, I'll finish the rest. Yes. Fairy Xingyu responded and gave orders to the Zhai Xing Lu disciples with great familiarity. The Zhai Xing Lu disciples followed Su Ji. After the star-picking tower disciple flew away, Fairy Xingyue nodded at Xiaohua and flew away. Junior thanks Taoist Master Xiao. Dongfang Yushan and the other aristocratic family disciples were all very happy when they saw Xiaohua raise his hand to signal them to fly up. After saluting Xiaohua one after another, they flew towards the meteor belt. This meteor belt was the same as before. It was also a dangerous place. Nearly 100 disciples of Zhai Xing Lu were accidentally swept into the spatial storm. Dozens of people from the scholarly families also met with misfortune. Under such circumstances, even people as strong as Su Ji and Fairy Xingyu were powerless to help. Xiaohua could only watch, unable to help. Xiaohua was the last one to rush into the gray brilliance. What greeted him was a huge void. This void was filled with black and white spatial ripples. Xiaohua's figure had just appeared when the void immediately collapsed like tofu. Then, a crooked and seemingly very fragile spatial passage appeared. Xiaohua even saw layers of spatial vortexes rushing into the depths of the void within the spatial passage, and the Confucian cultivator disciple who had just entered had already disappeared without a trace. That's true. Xiaohua released his soul consciousness and probed the teleportation passage. He thought to himself, if that immortal imperial equipment flew directly over, it would first break through this passage. Perhaps the space would collapse and all of us would be wiped out. Although the teleportation passage was a little fragile, it was safe. Xiaohua flew out of this crooked passage without any danger. When his eyes flashed, the starry sky disappeared. What greeted him was an extremely strange place. This place was like a large hall and also like a mountain range. There were vague mountain ridges in the surroundings that were immersed in an inexplicable darkness. Even someone as strong as Xiaohua could only release his spiritual force to a distance of 10,000 feet. Any further and he seemed to encounter a hard stone wall that he could not break through. Xiaohua's heart skipped a beat as he hurriedly probed the space. Indeed, as Fairy Xingyu had said, he could no longer sense the space. Damn it! Xiaohua frowned and cursed under his breath. He took out his astrolabe again. He was a little doubtful. He could not even sense the space. Would Su Ji's Dharma treasure be useful? Is that Senior Xiao in front? Just as Xiaohua was about to use Unstoppable Thunderbolt, the space in the darkness not far away rippled slightly, and then a black and white brilliance surged out, and a figure familiar to Xiaohua appeared from the brilliance. Wasn't that Zhu Qing? Zhu Qing had just calmed down when he saw Xiaohua. He could not help but be surprised and delighted. When Xiaohua saw that Zhu Qing had arrived here after him, he somewhat understood. He knew that the teleportation passage not only sent everyone in different directions, but also at different times. Hearing Zhu Qing speak, Xiaohua nodded and said, "Yes, it's me." "That's great." Zhu Qing was very happy. He flew over and bowed. "Junior greets Senior Xiao." Seeing Zhu Qing bow respectfully again, Xiaohua felt a wave of discomfort behind his neck. He smiled and helped Zhu Qing up. "Zhu Qing, I am going to meet up with your palace lord. If you are willing, you can come with me." Zhu Qing got up and smiled apologetically. "Junior cannot help where the palace lord is going. Junior will not go with Senior." "Oh." Xiaohua was surprised. He smiled and said, "Then where are you going? Is it where all the disciples of Zhai Xinglu go?" "I will let Senior know." Zhu Qing answered honestly. "Long before coming to the Thousand Demons Sacred Realm, my palace lord has already said that as long as we pass through the meteor belt, we will have to rely on our own fortuitous encounters. She will not interfere anymore. Of course, she has been to Xingyue Palace several times and has already scouted out the less dangerous places around here. She has also told us about the places that are helpful to our cultivation. Junior and the rest of us can find our own places to train according to our own circumstances. When Xingyue Palace appears again, we can go out as we wish." "I see." Xiaohua nodded. "Then I will not bother you anymore." At this point, Xiaohua's heart skipped a beat, and he asked again, "Oh right, where you train, can you use Cosmos bags?" "Some places can, some places can't." Zhu Qing answered. "This is Junior's first time here, so I am not very clear about the details." "Good," Xiaohua said with a smile. "I understand." As he spoke, Xiaohua formed a seal with his left hand and activated the thunderbolt technique in his body. A thick bolt of lightning landed on the astrolabe. The astrolabe flickered a few times, like a candle in the wind, and was quickly extinguished. There was no way to know where Su Ji and Fairy Xingyue were. Xiaohua thought for a moment and kept the astrolabe. He said, "In that case, I will go with you to take a look. After all, I have brought some disciples with me. I can't let them come here for nothing." "Senior, please." Zhu Qing had already seen the power of Xiaohua's Kunlun mirror, and naturally thought that Xiaohua had brought his disciples to Xingyue Palace. Seeing that Zhu Qing was still so polite, Xiaohua had no choice but to say, "Zhu Qing, I don't know where you are going to train. You should lead the way." "Yes, Senior." Zhu Qing obeyed the rules and agreed. She looked around and flew in a certain direction. After flying for a few miles, the number of Zhai Xinglu disciples around them began to increase. These disciples were originally a little nervous, but when they saw that Xiaohua was here, they felt relieved. Xiaohua was a little puzzled. He looked around at the Zhai Xinglu disciples who were flying with their heads down and asked Zhu Qing, "Zhu Qing, it's dark here and we can't use our divine consciousness. How do you know where to go?" Zhu Qing raised his hand and pointed to a curve in the darkness in the distance. He smiled and said, "Senior, please look. This is a mountain range. Our Xingyue Palace calls this mountain range Floating Wave Mountain Range. There are countless palaces built on it. These palaces also have a name, Lost Star Palace. Every palace in this Lost Star Palace is as big as the space fragment we encountered earlier. We just need to get close to the mountain range and find any palace." "Oh." Xiaohua raised his eyes to look at the seemingly right but actually wrong mountain range, and casually replied. Then, he turned his head to look behind him. Sure enough, the place behind him was a stretch of darkness, and the meteor belt from before had already disappeared. There was an indescribable heaviness in this darkness. Wherever one's gaze fell, it was as if they would sink into it. The mountain range seemed to be right in front of them, but Xiaohua and the others flew for a full hour and still did not see the promised palace. Xiaohua tried again with his divine consciousness, but it still could not reach far. He was a little impatient. After all, he had an appointment with Su Ji. He could not be sure that the place he and Zhu Qing came to was the same as Su Ji's. He unconsciously stopped. "Senior." Zhu Qing noticed that Xiaohua had stopped and immediately stopped as well. He asked, "Is something the matter?" "This Xiao has an agreement with your palace lord. This Xiao will not go to the palace in front. Xiaohua said with a smile. This Xiao hopes that you will have a good opportunity. Zhu Qing was a little disappointed, but he still said respectfully, Lord Palace Lord's matter is more important. Senior had better hurry and meet up with Lord Palace Lord. Junior's matter is nothing. If there is no opportunity this time, there will be another chance next time. Senior. The Xing Lu disciples beside him were also disappointed. They hurriedly said, Floating Wave Mountain Range may not be far ahead. If we want to enter Floating Wave Mountain Range, we have to pass through the strange beast enclosure. Junior's strength is limited. If we encounter the strange beasts in the strange beast enclosure, our lives will be in danger. Senior, please take pity on us and send us there. Everyone. Zhu Qing hurriedly said. Senior Xiao is still in a hurry to help Lord Palace Lord. We can't waste any more time here. Senior Xiao, since we are already so close, there is actually no need to waste any more time. These disciples seemed to know that Xiao Hua was soft-hearted and ignored Zhu Qing. They spoke pitifully to Xiao Hua. Chapter 45-39. Xiao Hua thought for a moment, then asked Zhu Qing, How far is it from here to the Floating Wave Mountain Range? Zhu Qing hesitated for a moment, then said, I'm not sure. But according to the Palace Master, it takes at least an hour to reach the Floating Wave Mountain Range from the meteor belt. The specific situation depends on the location of the meteor belt. Xiao Hua nodded and took out his astrolabe again. Unfortunately, he still couldn't activate it and couldn't determine the direction of Su Ji, Fairy Xingyu, and the others. Xiao Hua looked at the Floating Wave Mountain Range, then looked behind him, and asked, Zhu Qing, other than the Floating Wave Mountain Range, where else do you know? I don't know. Zhu Qing shook his head. What about you? Xiao Hua asked the others. Like Zhu Qing, they only knew about the Lost Star Palace. Forget it. Xiao Hua waved his hand and said, Since I can't contact your palace master, I can only go to the Lost Star Palace first. Hearing Xiao Hua's decision, not to mention the disciples of Xing Lu, even Zhu Qing was happy. Who didn't want a Mahayana cultivator by their side? Everyone bowed and said, Thank you, Senior. Now that he knew the direction and that there was a strange beast circle ahead, Xiao Hua naturally flew at the front and was on high alert. However, after flying for a while, more and more disciples of Xing Lu gathered from all directions. There was only darkness and a kind of desolate coldness. There was no strange beast circle like Zhu Qing and the others had mentioned, nor was there any mysterious restriction like Suji had mentioned. However, looking at the moving mountain range in the distance, Xiao Hua's heart gradually grew heavy, because a very strange feeling came from the darkness. This feeling was like a big hand was constantly moving around Xiao Hua, causing Xiao Hua's senses to constantly float, making it hard for him to control himself. Roar! 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 Suddenly, the silent darkness began to produce the roars of beasts. With the roars, the darkness became filled with a desolate presence. Strands of powerful presences flashed through the sky again and again. All of the sounds and auras seemed to have come from a single step, causing Xiao Hua to be startled. He hurriedly released his divine sense. Unfortunately, his divine sense was only able to extend for a few dozen meters before it was suppressed by some unknown aura. Oh! Just as Xiao Hua was probing, from the distant darkness, came the sound of hissing and miserable shrieks, mixed with the sound of ripples and explosions. Senior! Zhu Qing hurriedly said in a low voice, We've already entered the beast enclosure. The palace lord once said that the beasts here are as powerful as great sages of the Yao clan. Ordinary beasts can easily kill great Yao like Tun Ri. She brought us through the meteor belt, which is to enter the Lost Star Palace from the other side of the exotic beast circle. We might encounter fewer exotic beasts there. As for those screams, they were probably from the greater demons of the demon race. They didn't take a detour through the meteor belt and directly entered the beast enclosure. Naturally, they had a higher chance of encountering the beasts. The old man's suggestion to us was to conceal ourselves and pass through quickly without caring about anyone else. All right, got it. Quickly hide yourselves and pass this test. Xiao Hua nodded and urged them. He already had a feeling that a very strange aura had quietly formed in the surroundings. Zhu Qing and the others didn't dare to be negligent. They each activated their divine abilities and flew into the depths of the darkness at their fastest speed. Xiaohua tapped his glabella. As a green light flashed, his delirium breaker Dharma eye opened. However, wherever his Dharma eye looked, Xiaohua frowned again. This was because the entire darkness was filled with fine ripples. Not only did these ripples block the light in the distance, but they also made Xiaohua's Dharma eye feel dizzy. This was something Xiaohua had never encountered before. At this moment, a hair-raising aura suddenly appeared out of thin air and swept past a few hundred meters to Xiaohua's right. Xiaohua hurriedly turned his head, but his Dharma eye didn't see anything special in that direction. Ah! Immediately after, a miserable shriek came from where the aura landed. Xiaohua didn't dare to be negligent. He hurriedly closed his dizzy Dharma eye and swept it with his naked eye. He saw a Xianxia disciple's body being torn into several pieces, blood and flesh splattering all over the ground. What kind of invisible strange beast is this? Xiaohua turned pale with fright and tensed up in confusion. It's actually so powerful? Even my Dharma eye can't see it? Seeing that the strange beast was so powerful, Xiaohua's figure shrank rapidly. He raised his hands slightly and released his divine consciousness as much as possible. The other Xianxia disciples, such as Zhu Qing, fled in panic, not daring to stay for even a moment. Ah! Ah! Immediately after, several miserable shrieks sounded from the darkness in the distance. Xiaohua didn't dare to be negligent. He hurriedly flew up and grabbed at the direction of the shrieks with both hands. Boom! Layers of strange golden ripples appeared in the space about 10,000 feet to the left. These ripples were like two large hands, but they were separated from each other. Moreover, each layer produced several layers of illusory images. Although the entire space was controlled by Xiaohua's transcendence energy, Xiaohua keenly sensed that between these illusory images, there were even more overlapping layers of space. His transcendence energy couldn't control these spaces. Looking at the place where Xiaohua's large hands passed by, the corpses of 4 human cultivators and a demon were revealed. They had long been split into several pieces. However, in a moment, within the space that Xiaohua had confined, there was no trace of the strange beast at all. Xiaohua's eyes turned rapidly. A layer of cold sweat formed on his back. This strange beast was really too strange. It was also at this moment that Xiaohua's figure flew past that a faint illusory image flashed past. If Xiaohua hadn't released his divine consciousness to the limit and carefully scanned the surroundings, he wouldn't have discovered it. Xiaohua was surprised. What kind of illusory image is this? Looking at its position, it seems to be where the Xianxia disciple died. Could it be the soul of that disciple? Thinking of this, Xiaohua urged his figure to go to that place to investigate. Another wave of beastly roars of the demon being killed. Xiaohua couldn't help but raise his head slightly and look in the direction of the sound. Swoosh! A strange aura, like several gusts of wind, sprayed out from a huge beast's mouth and appeared near Xiaohua. Once Xiaohua sensed it, his figure moved and used the wind escape technique. Several layers of illusory images flashed past in an attempt to evade. Unfortunately, Xiaohua had only just moved his figure. Ka. In the void that was almost sticking to Xiaohua's body, a dozen invisible forces suddenly appeared and struck Xiaohua's back. A metallic sound rang out from the surface of Xiaohua's body, and a series of sparks flew up. Damn it! Xiaohua was very cautious, but he was still attacked by a strange beast. He couldn't help but be enraged. He cursed angrily and his right hand struck the void with a boom. The place where his fist landed immediately shattered the space within a radius of several feet. As the space collapsed and revealed itself, Xiaohua's fist also pierced the void. However, the strange thing happened again. There was nothing in the void at all. Those dozens of murderous forces seemed to have appeared out of thin air. The invisible strange beast was still invisible. Xiaohua's attack actually missed. Xiaohua was helpless. How could Zhu Qing and the other Xianxia disciples be a match for a strange beast that even he couldn't kill? It was no wonder that Fairy Xingyu had warned Zhu Qing and the others not to care about others as long as they hid and escaped. However, seeing that the strange beast was unable to break through the surface of his body, Xiaohua was relieved. He pondered for a moment, then his figure flashed and he chased in the direction that Zhu Qing and the others had flown. At this moment, roar! Waves of blood-curdling screams sounded in the distance and not too far away. Just as Xiaohua had flown 100 zhong away. Ayo! Behind Xiaohua, where he had just been ambushed, a dozen indistinct shadows with sharp barbs flashed past. Immediately after, a series of extremely long and miserable screams resounded from behind the shadows. Xiaohua, who was already prepared, immediately flew backward and reappeared in the space where he had just been standing. At this moment, Xiaohua clearly saw that behind where he had just been standing, a phantom several hundred feet in size flashed past in the space. Some parts of the phantom were folded, and some parts were disjointed. The phantom also had dozens of crab claws that twisted and danced. Of course, just as the phantom danced, a huge fist with golden light hit the center of the phantom. The phantom was immediately smashed to smithereens the moment it came into contact with the golden light. However, the smithereens flashed in the light of the void and could no longer be seen clearly. Isn't this the punch that this Xiao had just sent into the void? I clearly didn't hit the strange beast. Why did it only appear now? Ayo. Xiaohua suddenly came to a realization. This Xiao understands. The space that Xiaohua was in was different from the space that the strange beast caller was in. No, it wasn't that the space was different. It was that the space was the same but the time was different. Of course, the space at different times should also be different. The strange beast's space seemed to be slower than this Xiao's space. When the strange beast saw this Xiao, it immediately attacked. The strange beast's attack passed through an unknown space and hit this Xiao. This attack obviously wasn't in this Xiao's space, so this Xiao didn't have any time to dodge. This Xiao's physical body is strong, but the other disciples aren't. They were all killed. This Xiao immediately counterattacked. This Xiao's fist passed through an inexplicable gap in space and struck the exotic beast. Although the exotic beast was killed, there was no reaction within this Xiao's space. Only when the exotic beast's time was up did the phenomenon of the exotic beast being killed appear. It doesn't seem that way. This Xiao's thoughts are contradictory. Damn this. Isn't this the law of time? This strange beast caller was too terrifying, and this ancient Star Moon Palace was too strange. This Star Moon Palace is an ancient ruin. Chapter 45-40. Thinking of this, Xiaohua suddenly came to a realization. No. Fairy Xingyu is wrong. The Star Moon Palace is not an ancient relic. If the Star Moon Palace was an ancient relic, how could the Yiqiong heavenly mansion of the immortal world be in the meteor belt? The Star Moon Palace must have another origin. The Star Moon Palace is probably not an ancient relic as Fairy Xingyu guessed. Oh, that's not right either. Since the Star Moon Palace has the law of time, it might be entangled with the ancient times. It's not strange that the Yiqiong heavenly mansion fell into the meteor belt with the ancient 10,000 demon realm fragment, right? Forget it. Xiaohua was helpless in the end. As he flew, he thought, I've only comprehended some time fragments and haven't even comprehended the spatial laws. What's the use of thinking about it now? Let's go to the Lost Star Palace first. However, since I can see that there's the law of time here, how can Su Ji and Fairy Xingyu not see it? Why didn't they remind the disciples of Zhai Xinglu? Thinking of this, Xiaohua laughed again. So what if Fairy Xingyu told the disciples about the law of time? Even if she told them that the attacks of these strange beasts would come earlier than they knew. So what? They have no power to fight back at all. It's better not to tell them. Now that he knew the secret of the strange beasts' attacks, Xiaohua's mind worked quickly. In this space-time, whether it was the great demons of the Thousand Demons Sacred Realm, Zhu Qing and the other disciples of Zhai Xinglu, or even Xiaohua himself, they had no power to fight back in the face of the strange beasts' attacks from another space-time. However, Xiaohua also had a corresponding countermeasure. Of course, he could not get ahead of the law of time, nor could he change this law. However, he could warn or defend himself, Zhu Qing and the other disciples. Gotcha! As Xiaohua waved his hands, countless crystal lights fell into the void. The power of thunder was born in the darkness, enveloping the nearby space and protecting Zhu Qing and the other disciples who were flying around. However, he had only just managed to protect it. Swoosh! Immediately, a strange aura appeared around several disciples. Xiaohua knew that this was the strange beasts from the strange beast pens attacking through the space-time mezzanine. He had no choice but to circulate his magic power and observe the effects of the defense. Sure enough, as soon as the aura was born, the powerful power of thunder shattered it. There were even some lightning swords piercing into the void. Of course, there was no movement. Xiaohua ignored it. He and the other disciples continued to fly forward. As expected, after flying Yu Waiyue and the other disciples, Yu Waiyue, Wai Waiyue and the other disciples to the strange Yu was Yu. Yu and the other disciples Waiyue. In the next half a cup of tea's time, there were no more strange beasts causing trouble for him. Xiaohua escorted Zhu Qing and the other disciples safely to the so-called floating wave mountain range. As usual, Xiaohua first activated the star plate, but seeing that the star plate still didn't move, Xiaohua felt helpless. He turned to look at the floating wave mountain range. At this point, there were no longer any Zhai Xing Lu disciples at the foot of the mountain range. Only the faint cries of agony and the cries of beasts could be heard in the distant darkness. He could not tell whether it was a great demon or a strange beast from the void. Xiaohua pinched his chin and looked at the vague mountain range. He opened his illusion breaker Dharma Eye again. What he saw with his Dharma Eye was still the same as before. There were many fine lines, and behind the fine lines was another blurry world. At this time, Xiaohua already understood. If he wasn't wrong, these lines should be the lines of the time laws. Behind these lines should be another space. A space that overlapped with the space where Xiaohua was standing. Of course, when these fine lines fell into his transcendence vision gave birth to an indescribable dizziness, and Xiaohua felt as if the world was spinning. Xiaohua didn't dare to look any longer. Just as he was about to close his Dharma eyes, he vaguely saw that in the distant space, there seemed to be some golden threads surging like water ripples. Closing his Dharma eyes, Xiaohua rested for a moment, then looked at the golden ripples. Wasn't it the shadow of the undulating mountain range? Xiaohua was already used to it. He clearly knew that in this star-moon palace, most of his common sense would be overturned. He didn't need to look for the source behind the appearance at all. He just needed to stay alive and find Suji and Fairy Xingyu. Ah! At this time, in the undulating darkness, another faint scream rang out, attracting Xiaohua's attention. Xiaohua was a little surprised. Zhu Qing and the others had said clearly that they would reach a safe zone after passing through the exotic beast enclosure. There weren't any special dangers in the floating wave mountain range. Even if there were pavilions bigger than spatial fragments, as long as they could enter, they could enter. There was no way to know what was inside the floating wave mountain range. If they couldn't enter, then they couldn't enter. It wasn't a matter of life and death. Immediately after, Xiaohua urged his body, wanting to turn into a rainbow and fly out. However, the moment he moved, a strong resistance appeared in the surrounding space, blocking Xiaohua's path. The faster Xiaohua wanted to fly, the stronger the resistance became. Xiaohua slowed down, and the resistance gradually disappeared. Interesting. Xiaohua smiled faintly and slowed down his flying speed, flying towards the source of the scream. However, he saw layers upon layers of mountain-like silhouettes passing under him. When Xiaohua's figure landed, the silhouette of the mountain-like silhouette was empty again, and another layer of silhouettes appeared under him. In short, Xiaohua couldn't touch the so-called floating wave mountain range at all. Could this be another mountain range in another space? Xiaohua laughed inwardly. Suddenly, a thought flashed through his mind like lightning. Xiaohua's smile disappeared, and he came to a sudden stop. Looking at the mountain range in the distance, the mountain-like rocks under him, and the invisible exotic beast enclosure behind him, he cried out involuntarily, "Damn it, I understand now. Why can't I increase my flying speed in this space?" That's because there's another space outside this space. The same place has two different times, and the only way to pass through these two spaces is to increase my flying speed. In other words, the obstruction this Xiao encountered when he was flying wasn't some kind of restrictive force, but the power of time. If my flying speed reaches a certain level, I'll be able to break through this obstruction, and I'll definitely reach the other space. Thinking of this, Xiaohua thought of his own light escape technique. Similarly, if this Xiao wants to practice the light escape technique, he'll inevitably encounter a spatial barrier in an ordinary space. If this Xiao's flying speed is faster, I'll be able to break through this spatial barrier. Then, isn't that the immortal realm? If I'm sheltered in light, I'll be an immortal, that's how it should be. With this thought, Xiaohua's heart couldn't help but be eager to give it a try. He narrowed his eyes and looked at the top of the mountain range. The true essence in his body began to slowly circulate, and layers of fine lightning appeared on the surface of his body. Boom, boom, boom. Suddenly, Xiaohua moved. The lightning around his body flickered, illuminating the surrounding space. As the lightning flickered, the space-time resistance immediately appeared, as if a surging wave was surging from all directions, annihilating Xiaohua's entire body. Xiaohua's body slowly moved, and 4 layers of illusory images were also slowly born. After the 4 layers of illusory images were formed, Xiaohua's body actually turned into a bolt of lightning. This bolt of lightning was first more than 10 feet long, similar to Xiaohua's height. Then, the bolt of lightning rapidly elongated, rushing forward 10 feet, then 100 feet. Simultaneously, the bolt of lightning gradually became illusory, distorted, and broke into dozens of pieces. Every piece of lightning was pulled apart like a broken lotus root, and every piece seemed to be cut off by the void, but also seemed to be connected together. In addition, the rumbling of thunder was also elongated, and it gradually penetrated deep into the void. This phenomenon only lasted for a few breaths of time before the lightning suddenly shuddered. Without any warning, the bolt of lightning crossed over 1,000 feet and condensed on the other side. At the same time, Xiaohua's body reappeared. Unlike before, Xiaohua's body had already become 132 illusory specks, and it was as if he were about to fuse into the void. Unfortunately, just as 70% of the 132 specks disappeared, the remaining 30% trembled violently, and all of the specks that had disappeared before reappeared. Xiaohua's entire body flashed like a wave of water, and he was completely revealed in mid-air once again. At this moment, large beads of sweat suddenly appeared on Xiaohua's forehead, and his arm, which had been raised, drooped down powerlessly. How was this the aura of a human Grand Ascension stage being? Sigh, even though my lightning movement technique has already reached the phenomenal success stage, it's still not enough to break through the restrictions of time. The fine lines formed by time and space are even more powerful than the will of heaven and earth, and it looks like the lightning is about to break through these fine lines, but it still fell short in the end. Xiaohua sighed, but his eyes flashed like starlight again, and he thought to himself, however, compared to before, my flying speed has increased significantly. If I can obtain the final essence of water and cultivate my wind movement technique to the phenomenal success stage, I should be able to break through the restrictions of heaven and earth. However, in the instant that I broke through space, I seem to have seen waves, right? Could it be that this star-moon palace is a reef in another space? Xiaohua came to a sudden realization. Could it be that this star-moon palace is an immortal abode that opened up at the bottom of the sea? Ha ha ha, things in this world are really strange. Xiaohua shook his head, and once again, he slowly moved his body and laughed. If it was a disciple of Zhai Xinglu like Zhu Qing, he would probably never have imagined that this star-moon palace is actually something similar to an immortal abode in another space, at the bottom of the sea. Chapter 45-41. Although Xiaohua had yet to fly up the floating wave mountain range and see the so-called Lost Star Palace, everything he had encountered since the meteor had already given him a bountiful harvest. It was much more useful than traveling. When Xiaohua flew out of the silhouette of the mountain range and arrived in the sky where he could see all the mountains, Xiaohua smiled again. This was because the peak of the mountain range was not the peak of the mountain, but a wave-like hill. It was similar to the ripples he saw in the other space. However, the surging waves were frozen here, and there were countless palaces on top of the frozen ripple mountain range. In fact, instead of palaces, it would be better to call them reefs of different shapes. These palaces were not built together, but scattered on the mountain peak. Each palace had a different appearance, and they did not even have the outline of a palace. Apart from the various colors of light that seeped out from the protrusions and depressions of these palaces, they were really not much different from reefs. There's no need to say more, Xiaohua said helplessly. Since Fairy Xingyu called this star-moon palace, she would naturally call this ugly reef a star palace. I'm afraid she also felt that calling this ugly thing a star palace was a little far-fetched, so she called it Lost Star. Heh, a Lost Star Palace. This reef looks like he's trying to be cultured. As he spoke, Xiaohua's gaze fell on a spot on the mountain peak. There was the corpse of a fat monk lying there. Wasn't this the body that the Grand Mist ancestor had occupied earlier? At this time, the left arm of the corpse was gone, and the other parts were slowly melting away. So the Grand Mist ancestor is also here. Xiaohua immediately understood when he saw the body and said with a smile, I think with his ability he won't die here. If I'm not wrong, he must have obtained the strange beast collar through other means. Moreover, when he arrived here, his body was severely damaged, so he had no choice but to attack other cultivators and occupy their bodies. However, I don't know which star palace he wants to go to. What kind of conspiracy does he have? While Xiaohua was pondering, the body that the Grand Mist ancestor had occupied earlier slowly disappeared. It was unknown whether it had fallen into another space or was being corroded away. In any case, Xiaohua didn't dare to reach out and touch it. Xiaohua's gaze swept across the area. There were a few star palaces in the distance, but he couldn't see anything special about any of them. He also didn't know which star palace the Grand Mist ancestor would go to. Xiaohua only paused for a moment, then casually flew in a direction. When he passed by a few star palaces, he casually landed in one of them. Just as he was about to approach the star palace, he saw that there were circles of distortions outside the star palace. These distortions formed a crooked, and there were even some mottled and empty vortexes in the middle. A faintly discernible suction force and resplendent starlight were born from the vortexes. Xiaohua did not even think, and his body flickered with a protective golden light as he fell into the vortexes. At the same time Xiaohua's figure landed in the star palace, the star palace beside him began to tremble violently. As it trembled, the entire star palace gradually twisted together like a fried dough twist. Then, circles of fluctuations rushed into the sky. The shadows within several hundred li of Xiaohua suddenly lit up. This light was similarly distorted, broken, and mottled. After a few flashes of light, with a swish sound, it fell and covered the star palace. The light was like a star. It first floated outside the star palace, then seeped into the star palace, and disappeared in an instant. The light was like a pillar, and it mainly covered the star palace. The star palace that Xiaohua had landed in, and the few star palaces to his left, also had light floating down. The interior of the star palace was an almost empty space. The sky was filled with mottled specks of light that had yet to take shape. On the ground, there were layers of solidified magma shadows. It was a pity that the magma did not have any heat. Although there was a lot of fiery red light flashing on the surface of the magma, they were all shadows, as if they were drawn in the void. In the middle of the sky and the earth, there was a man of ordinary build. If this man had one black and one white eye dug out, even if he was thrown into a crowd, no one would notice. However, because of these two eyes, he was no longer himself. He was the Grand Mist ancestor. The man let out a self-righteous chuckle. It's really here. This star palace that was born when the Grand Mist ancestor was born, and heaven and earth had yet to form. This is where I condensed my body and was reborn. Motherfucker, I've been hiding for so long. Isn't it all for this day? Gaochen, Virokana, golden-winged great Peng, do you think I'm afraid of you? I just don't have a physical body, so I can't unleash my abilities. And that Xiaohua. Do you think you're strong just because you're a Mahayana realm expert? After we leave the Star Moon Palace, I'll let you know who the #1 expert of the Tao Gate is. Your soaring Dragon Mountain range, your Fortune Gate's disciples, you'd better obediently hand them over to me. Otherwise, I won't hesitate to kill you. After he finished speaking, the Grand Mist ancestor threw his head back and laughed. His laughter reverberated through the entire space. As the Grand Mist ancestor's laughter resounded, the space around him started to collapse, and the collapse rapidly spread through the entire space. Kacha! Streaks of blood appeared on the man's face. Following that, the man's scholarly robes turned into dust, and thumb-sized cracks appeared on his naked body. The cracks were so deep that they reached his bones. Boom! Black and white clouds appeared above the man's head and below his feet, and they converged in the middle. The man's body turned into dust with a loud bang. Humph! Such a weak body can't even withstand a single blow. If it wasn't for the fact that this old man had a fortuitous encounter in the Star Palace and obtained the method to condense a body from the Yin Yang Illustrated Handbook, even if this old man was immortal, I'm afraid I wouldn't have the chance to rise again. Boom! Another thunderous boom rang out, and the black and white clouds finally collided. At the center of the clouds, a picturesque thing appeared. There seemed to be many drawings on it, and it also seemed to be blank. An indescribable light shone down from the sky, and tens of thousands of cryptic runes appeared on the picture. The runes were reflected in the light, and they turned into primal chaos phenomena, primordial chaos phenomena, desolate desolation phenomena, humanistic phenomena, and so on. The runes only floated up a few feet before they suddenly descended. The picture quickly condensed, and in a few breaths' time, a black and white human figure appeared where the picture had disappeared. Although the human figure was black and white, the black and white were mixed with the cryptic runes from before. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Just as the humanoid figure was formed, the space around it began to slice apart. Pieces of snowflake-like brilliance fell into the humanoid figure's body. The center of the humanoid figure gradually began to light up. When the humanoid figure was completely transparent, the black and white clouds began to churn. The white clouds gradually condensed into a green seal character, which was the word heaven. The black clouds also condensed into another green seal character, which was the word earth. As the two green seal characters appeared, the entire space fell silent. Two terrifying auras appeared out of nowhere, and they fell into the two words through space. Then, the chanting of gods and ghosts gradually filled the entire space. As the two terrifying auras fell, the transparent human figure in the center also gradually turned into a green seal character, which was the word human. When the word human appeared, it immediately stood tall and connected with the two green seal characters, heaven and earth. Boom! When the word human connected heaven and earth, the two terrifying auras also tangled together. The entire space trembled and rumbled, as if it couldn't bear the burden. Then, layers of spirals appeared in the space, tangling together from top to bottom. In just a moment, countless moonlight from outer space fell from the sky, falling into the white clouds of the word heaven. At the same time, the power of the stars from the other heavens also rushed out, falling into the black clouds of the word earth. Then, the power of the stars and the moon rushed into the word human in the center. Ka 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 ka. The strange black and white lightning was wreaking havoc in the entire space. Every time the lightning flashed, the space would tremble, and the human character would grow in size. After a total of 81 times, the human character had grown to a size of 10,000 feet. Roar! The word heaven and the word earth let out a roar that had never appeared in the mortal world. The two terrifying auras disappeared like the tide, and then the two clouds of mist fell on the top and bottom of the word human. Kacha! The clouds of mist disappeared, and the lightning above the word human also retracted. When the green seal characters shattered, a 1,000 feet tall human figure appeared in the air. The human-shaped heavenly court was full and round, and its two pairs of thick eyebrows were like two flying swords. One of its eyes was slightly black, while the other was slightly white. However, when its gaze flashed past, an aura that could shake the world involuntarily appeared. Under the eyes, the nose was like a hanging gallbladder, and a dignified feeling was easily revealed. However, under his nose, his lips were too thin. The arrogance and sneer at the corners of his mouth all revealed ruthlessness and sneers, heartless and unrighteous. Ha ha ha. The human figure raised its head and laughed. It was the voice of the Grand Mist Ancestor. I finally succeeded in condensing my body. The Grand Mist Ancestor laughed for a long time, then looked down at his hands, feet, and body. A satisfied smile appeared on his face, and he whispered, "The Yin Yang Illustrated Handbook was right. A body formed with the help of the power of the stars is not an ordinary body, but the Xiantian Dao body. With this Xiantian Dao body, it is easier for me to communicate with heaven and earth. The origin energy of heaven and earth that ordinary people can't sense is a part of my Dao body. I can absorb the origin energy of heaven and earth as my own without refining it. In this way, even a dying child can cultivate to the nascent soul stage extremely quickly. As for me, my Dao foundation was formed long ago, and I just used this body to cultivate again. There are no bottlenecks in the cultivation process, and I only need to use the Dao pills that I have prepared long ago to return to the Mahayana stage. Ha ha ha, the Xiantian Dao body is not only the body of the human race, but also the body of the demon race. I don't need to refine it too much, and it is comparable to the body of a great demon or even a demon king. If I refine it for tens of thousands of years, I may not be inferior to the great sages of the Great Sage Hall. With such a foundation, it will be easy for me to control all the Dao sects in the world, and the revival of the Dao sects is just around the corner. Chapter 45-42. At this point, this old man's trip to the Xianxia Palace is complete. As he spoke, a trace of regret appeared on the Grand Mist Ancestor's face. However, there was also pride in his regret. He thought to himself, however, most things in the world can't go as one wishes. Due to my lack of strength, I still couldn't refine the yin-yang illustration to the extreme. It was difficult for me to reach the yin-yang stage. Otherwise, the yin-yang illustration wouldn't just be the heaven-earth profound realm, but the yin-yang primordial realm. If that was the case, this old man would be able to control fate and reverse yin and yang. I would be able to condense an immortal spiritual body and ascend. As he spoke, the Grand Mist Ancestor opened his mouth and spat out a ray of clear light. Within the clear light, a palm-sized flag appeared. The flag was multicolored and its design was very strange. What was special about it was that there were many strange beasts embroidered on it. The flag flashed in the clear light and the beasts flew out again. They turned into powerful shadows and circled around the Grand Mist Ancestor. Haha, everyone knows that this old man has the yin-yang illustration. Who knows that this old man has the 100 Beasts flag? After this old man successfully refines these treasures, I will have the help of several hundred monster beasts with cultivation similar to this old man's. Let alone the human race. Even the Great Sacred Hall will not be my match. With these 2 treasures, who in the 3 continents will be my match? Who can compare with my good fortune? The Grand Mist Ancestor laughed loudly and didn't retract his 1,000 feet Xiantian Dao physique. Instead, he formed seals with both hands and started to cultivate. Endless amounts of star energy and heaven-earth yuan qi rushed into his body. Foundation establishment, enlightening, fusion, heartbeat, solitary spirit, golden core, nascent soul, astral projection, spirit severing, and other realms appeared on the Grand Mist Ancestor's Dao physique like blooming flowers. The pressure shook the entire space as it gradually approached the fusion, tribulation transcendence, and Mahayana realm. Xiaohua naturally didn't know that the Grand Mist Ancestor was in the Star Palace next to him. The Grand Mist Ancestor had already condensed his body and his strength was approaching Xiaohua's. In the future, Xiaohua would have to face an opponent who was not only strong but also full of schemes. He only stood in the other Star Palace in a daze. The Star Palace Xiaohua had entered was different from the space Grand Mist Ancestor had entered. Xiaohua was facing an enormous mountain peak. This mountain peak had many protrusions from top to bottom, and it looked as if there were thorns growing on the mountain peak. Moreover, there was an extremely dense heaven-earth yuan qi in this space, and even a trace of thin immortal qi. Looking at the peak of the mountain, there was also a small platform with a black box on it. The box was about 4 feet long and looked very ordinary. There were no runes on its surface, nor were there any fluctuations. It was similar to the fist-sized box that Xiaohua had obtained in the heavenly prison. Xiaohua was currently standing in front of the box with a dazed look on his face. He had never imagined that he would encounter such a strange box the moment he entered a star palace. Xiaohua waved his hand, and the box fell into his hand. He examined it from top to bottom, and sure enough, he didn't discover anything. He then tried to send his consciousness into the space, and sure enough, he was able to connect with the space inside the Star Palace. He took out the fist-sized box and compared it with the space. Once again, he put the 2 boxes into his space. The Jade Archive Xiaohua also couldn't see through this box. This black box is too strange. Xiaohua put away the 2 boxes and pondered inwardly. It appeared twice, and both times were related to time laws. Could it be that this box contains a fragment of time? It's a pity that this Xiao doesn't know how to open this box. Right. Isn't there still Suji and Fairy Xingyu? When I see them later, I'll let them take a look. While Xiaohua was thinking, he saw moonlight falling from the sky, and starlight surged out from the ground. The entire space was filled with moonlight. Good. Seeing this, Xiaohua's heart skipped a beat. He clapped his hands and laughed. Isn't this my Fortune Gate's disciples' opportunity? Although this Star Moon Palace has time laws, there shouldn't be space fragments like the heavenly prison. Fortune Gate's disciples can't be as clever as this Xiao. Now that this space has moonlight, isn't this the perfect opportunity to temper their bodies? With this foundation, their future cultivation will be twice the result with half the effort, several times faster than ordinary cultivators. Moreover, this space's origin energy is abnormally abundant, and there's even a trace of immortal qi. Perhaps this will give them a better opportunity. While pondering, Xiaohua's consciousness entered the Shenhua continent and turned into the Jade Archive Xiaohua. He raised a finger, and this finger turned into thousands of fragments, landing on Xiongyi, Xianxia, and the others' foreheads. The secret technique of absorbing moonlight to temper their bodies was already imprinted in their minds. Subsequently, Xiaohua invited all the Fortune Gate's disciples, Xianxia, and the others out from the Shenhua continent. With a wave of his sleeve, everyone occupied a protrusion on the mountain peak. Xiaohua himself sat on the mountain peak, facing the sky with his palms facing the sky as he explained the secret technique's profundity word by word. As he explained, the various cultivators began to absorb the moonlight into their bodies. When he finished, Xiaohua stood up and swept his divine sense across the space. There was nothing wrong. Xiaohua smiled faintly. Looking at the moonlight that was still pouring into the space, his figure flickered, and he soared into the sky. A moment later, Xiaohua's vision blurred, and he appeared outside the Star Moon Palace. So that's how it is. Xiaohua's gaze landed on the Grand Mist Ancestor Star Palace, and he immediately understood what was going on. Someone must have obtained a fortuitous encounter here, and that's why the other star palaces are benefiting. But I wonder who that person is? Could it be? With this thought, Xiaohua's figure was about to enter the Star Palace. Unfortunately, before Xiaohua could land, a repulsive force appeared above the Star Palace, blocking Xiaohua's path. Io, could it be that if there's someone inside the Star Palace, other people can't enter? Xiaohua was a little confused. He looked at the nearby star palaces and randomly picked one to land. As expected, the space he landed in was empty, and there were no other cultivators or greater demons. When Xiaohua looked at the star palace again, he couldn't help but smile. With a wave of his hand, he brought Ao Shang, Ao Zhan, and the others out from the space. Stacked Jadeite Legacy Realm? The moment Ao Shang landed in the space, he was overjoyed. He shook his head and wagged his tail as he exclaimed. Xiaohua laughed. He pointed at the waves below his feet and asked, "Is there seawater in your stacked Jadeite Legacy Realm?" "Haha, I don't care." Ao Shang looked at the rich power of the stars and moon, as well as the faint dragon qi. He immediately activated the Dragon Island's secret technique, and his entire dragon body was covered in dragon marks. "Thank you, Senior." Ao Zhan and the others did not dare to delay and hurriedly began to cultivate. Xiaohua waited for a moment, and when he saw that they did not occupy much space, he summoned some of Jianghu's descendants from the Shenhua continent and instructed them to cultivate here. Then, Xiaohua flew out again and landed in the nearby star palaces. Except for one star palace that could not be entered, the other 4 star palaces were empty. These 4 star palaces were either a snowy land, a grassland, a demon territory, or a starry sky. Apart from the unusually rich power of the stars and moon, they also had their own unique characteristics. There were even places where the qi of righteousness was strange. Therefore, Xiaohua released Xiaohuang, Xiaohe, Gongshu, Yisin, Emo Jianli, and the others from Shenhua continent. With them here, other cultivators could not enter. After the Star Moon Palace closed, they would be safely evacuated by the Star Moon Palace. There would be no threat to their lives. The only thing that Xiaohua was worried about was that the Star Moon Palace would push these disciples to various places in the 3 continents. No one knew what dangers they would encounter in the 3 continents. However, this was no longer something that Xiaohua could control. These disciples could not cultivate under his wings for the rest of their lives. Phew! When he came out of the last star palace, Xiaohua let out a long sigh. He thought with a smile, "Fortunately, I have completed one of the 2 missions in the Star Moon Palace. Now, there is only the matter of Su Ji and Fairy Xingyue left." Thinking of this, Xiaohua took out the astrolabe out of habit. A thunderbolt landed on the astrolabe. Xiaohua didn't have much hope at first, because he had already tried before. However, what surprised him was that where the lightning landed, the astrolabe flickered and actually disappeared into thin air, turning into an arrow and a dot of light that landed on his right hand. Oh! Xiaohua looked at the light spot, then at the arrow, and then at the star palace. He nodded thoughtfully. It seems that the astrolabe can only be activated because this star palace has attracted the power of the stars and moon to break the restriction this time. This light spot should be where Su Ji and Fairy Xingyue are. This arrow is flying in the direction of Su Ji and Fairy Xingyue. Then, Xiaohua did not dare to delay. He urged his body to fly in the direction of the arrow. Contrary to Xiaohua's expectations, the arrow was not pointing in the direction that Xiaohua had come from. Instead, it was pointing in the depths of the floating wave mountain range. Xiaohua flew for a full hour. Not only did the reef-like star palace disappear, but the wave-like mountain peak also disappeared. A plane appeared in front of Xiaohua. Xiaohua stood at the edge of the mountain peak, hesitating. This plane did not look very big. It was like a public square. The public square was filled with indescribable light and shadows. These light and shadows looked like palaces, mountains, and even strange beasts. However, when Xiaohua's gaze landed on the dusky plain, he discovered something strange about it. This was because the plain was almost boundless. His gaze seemed to fall into a pitch-black deathly stillness, and he could not see the end. Moreover, a hair-raising feeling involuntarily arose in Xiaohua's heart. Xiaohua looked at his right hand. The light spot on it was a little weak, but the arrow was not wrong. It was pointing at the light and shadow on the other side of the plain. Needless to say, Su Ji and Fairy Xingyue were definitely in that light and shadow. At this moment, Xiaohua had no other choice. Xiaohua cautiously opened his Dharma eye with difficulty. However, after seeing an even denser patch of fine lines, there was actually a blank space. There was nothing. This is a little troublesome. Xiaohua closed his Dharma eye and pinched his chin. He looked at the plain, which was even more terrifying than the strange beast circle, and thought to himself, I wonder what's so strange about this plain. It was also at this moment that a few faint whistling sounds came from the distance. Xiaohua's heart skipped a beat. He turned his head and saw a few black figures flying over from another direction. It seemed to be from the side of the fallen star palace. Xiaohua's divine sense could not go very far, and his vision could not see clearly. Chapter 45-43. After a while, the black figures were revealed. They were 4 demons and 2 humans. These demons and humans were obviously working together, and they were heading in a different direction from Xiaohua. However, when they saw Xiaohua from afar, they immediately flew over. When the human cultivator saw Xiaohua's appearance, he couldn't help but exclaim, Xiao! Master Xiao? Xiaohua looked at this person and didn't have any special impression. He already knew that this was the human cultivator who saw him outside the Star Moon Palace. Yes, it's me. Xiaohua nodded slightly. The human cultivator in front was a nascent soul cultivator of the Dao sect. He stopped and bowed. Junior is Chen Cheng, a Dao sect cultivator from Jing Province's Dry Feather Manor. Greetings. Senior Xiao. Then the other Dao sect master of the 5th level hurriedly said respectfully, Junior is Ma Miaoka of Jing Province's Ma family. Greetings. Senior Xiao. He rise. Seeing a Dao sect cultivator and a Confucian cultivator working together, he was happy and raised his hand to signal the 2 to rise. After the 2 humans, there were naturally 4 demons. Among the 4 demons, one looked like a fire stork, one looked like a green leopard, one looked like a flying tiger, and one looked like a fox. However, these 4 demons were much stronger than the 2 humans. Other than the green leopard who was close to the sun-devouring realm, the other 3 were in the star-plucking realm. The 4 demons were hesitant. After all, they didn't know Xiaohua's temper. However, when Xiaohua looked at them, the smile on Xiaohua's face wasn't as distant as they feared. The 4 demons were overjoyed and hurriedly went forward to greet and introduce themselves. Xiaohua helped them up one by one and said with a smile, Where are you going? Senior. Please no. We want to find a chance to pass through this ghost plane and head to the resplendent sea of stars. Ma Miaoka hurriedly replied, But we've been looking for a long time and haven't seen a good opportunity. Moreover, when we passed through the strange beast circle, the cultivators who came with us all died. Only the 4 of us are left. Ghost planes. Xiaohua immediately understood when he heard this. This must be the place with the inexplicable restriction that Suji had mentioned. However, listening to Ma Miaoka's words, he seemed to want to travel with Xiaohua. Xiaohua thought for a moment and asked, "Why are you heading to the resplendent sea of stars? Isn't there a lot of opportunities in the Lost Star Palace?" "Senior." Chen Cheng hurriedly smiled and said, "Although the Lost Star Palace is beneficial to the cultivation of the human race, there are not many opportunities for the monster race. Before we entered the Star Moon Palace, we had already discussed with these immortal friends of the Thousand Demons' sacred realm that we would head to the resplendent sea of stars together. Moreover, many fellow immortals have contributed a lot in the beast enclosure. We can't go back on our word. So it's like that." Xiaohua thought for a moment and nodded. "It's great that you all can keep your promise. But this is also my first time in Star Moon Palace. Although I have discussed with Star Moon Palace Master about the matters after entering Star Moon Palace, I have no idea how to pass through Ghost Plain. To tell you the truth, I didn't even know this place was called Ghost Plain before I met you. So, I don't have any special methods to guarantee that I can pass through this Ghost Plain." Xiaohua's words could not be ignored by these humans and monsters. But whether they believed him or not was not something Xiaohua could know. The fox smiled faintly and said, "Senior Xiao, you are a Mahayana stage human and a supreme being in Star Moon Palace. This Ghost Plain is a land of death for us, but for Senior, it's just a plain. We sincerely hope that Senior can help us pass through this land of death. We will never forget Senior's kindness." Sigh. Xiaohua sighed helplessly. Even the law enforcers of the immortal realm weren't confident that they could pass through Ghost Plain. How could Xiaohua, a Mahayana stage human, make such a promise? However, Xiaohua didn't refuse. His gaze swept across the 4 demon clan members as he nodded and said, "I'm also going to pass through this so-called Ghost Plain to head to the resplendent sea of stars. Since we've met its fate, I'm willing to take all of you through this Ghost Plain." When the 4 demons and 2 humans heard this, they were overjoyed. Just as they were about to bow, Xiaohua waved his hand again and stopped the 6 of them from bowing. He did not hide his attitude and continued, "However, I want to make things clear. There seems to be a restriction set up in the void above the Ghost Plains. Anyone who encounters this attack seems to have no chance of escaping. The Palace Master of the Star Moon Palace has personally witnessed 4 demons of the sun-devouring realm being instantly annihilated by this restriction. I have no confidence in being able to evade this restriction, nor do I have any confidence in being able to help you if you encounter this restriction. Of course, rest assured, if I discover anything, I'll be sure to notify you." Of course, juniors believe in senior." The 2 humans and 6 demons hurriedly nodded their heads and answered with joy. They didn't believe that Xiaohua could pass through the Ghost Plains without using any magical ability to break through the restrictions. Of course, even if Xiaohua didn't have any special magical ability, having such a supreme cultivator of the 3 continents by his side was still better than risking their lives to pass through. "First, tell me what kind of opportunity you are looking for." Xiaohua declined to comment and asked again. Chen Cheng hurriedly replied, "According to the seniors who've been to the Star Moon Palace before, although Ghost Plain is extremely long and almost boundless, there are more opportunities when you're about 40% of the distance from Floating Wave Mountain Range. Furthermore, when passing through Ghost Plain and encountering the restriction, the opportunity will appear. As long as you're not killed by the restriction, you can be transported to the resplendent sea of stars." "How far is this place from your ideal location?" Xiaohua nodded and asked. "About half a meal's time." Chen Cheng hurriedly replied. Xiaohua smiled. "Lead the way." "Yes, senior." Chen Cheng glanced at Ma Miaoka and respectfully replied. The 2 of them flew in front to accompany Xiaohua, while the 4 demons tactfully followed behind. It seemed that the secret of passing through Ghost Plain was already a well-known secret. After flying for half a meal's time, another 10 demons and 4 Confucian cultivators flew over from other directions. There were even dozens of greater demons waiting at the edge of Floating Wave Mountain Range. Seeing Xiaohua, a Grand Ascension stage human, arrive, all the demons were pleasantly surprised and came over to greet him. Xiaohua had no choice but to raise his hand and help the demons up, saying, "There's no need for formalities. This is my first time here, so I don't know much about Ghost Plain. What plans did you all have before? What plans do you all have now? Just take this old man into consideration. Yes, Senior. When the few great Yaos heard that, they became even happier. After all, they had already discussed this before entering the Star Moon Palace. Now that Xiaohua had suddenly appeared, their plans had been disrupted. If Xiaohua were to continue acting on his own, who would dare to disobey him? In that case, all of their previous arrangements would be for naught. Thus, the human cultivators chatted with Xiaohua, while the sharp-looking greater demons, including that fox, gathered together to discuss and wait. After another incense stick's worth of time, just as Xiaohua was starting to get impatient, another dozen greater demons flew over. These greater demons were all injured and appeared to be in quite a sorry state. When they saw Xiaohua, they were also surprised and hurriedly extended respectful greetings. Xiaohua waved a hand, indicating for them to meet up with the other greater demons. Meanwhile, he turned his gaze toward Ghost Plain, which was beginning to glow. Moments later, 3 greater demons came over and respectfully said, "Senior, we can enter the plane now." "All right." Xiaohua nodded. "Do you want me to go in first?" The greater demon nodded with an awkward expression. "Yes, Senior is a Grand Ascension stage human." "Humph, how can that be?" A great grandmaster at the side hurriedly snorted and said, "Before we arrived at the Star Moon Palace, we had already discussed this. Your demon clan's demon body is the strongest. The one in front should be your demon clan's great demon swallowing Sunday. How can we let a Grand Ascension stage senior lead the way? He should be walking in the middle." "This," Sun Devourer stuttered and replied, "Didn't Senior Xiao say?" Before the greater demon could finish his sentence, another fox interjected, "During our discussion, we also made it clear that we should put the most powerful and confident ones in the front. Senior Xiao is the most powerful, so we naturally have to ask him to walk in the front and protect us." "No, we don't agree." Another scholarly cultivator also yelled. Xiaohua smiled. He was naturally aware that whoever was arranged to walk in the front and who was arranged to walk in the back would be a competition between the human race and the demon race. Under normal circumstances, Xiaohua would most likely listen to the scholarly cultivators and walk in the middle. At the very least, he wouldn't walk in the front. However, he also understood that in this Ghost Plains, where even Suji wasn't confident, luck was the most important factor, so there was no difference between walking in the front and walking in the back. Furthermore, he had already said that he would listen to their arrangements, so he naturally couldn't go back on his word. However, Xiaohua was still a little perplexed. If they wanted him to take care of the demon race and the human race, then he should be in the middle. If he was arranged to walk in the front, then he wouldn't be able to take care of too many demon race beings. Could it be that these demon race beings have some other plan? Xiaohua's brows furrowed as he thought to himself, would they have the guts to do something like this? However, after Xiaohua landed on the plains, he began to understand what was going on. This plains was extremely strange. Not only was he unable to release his spiritual sense, but he also couldn't use his spiritual sense to probe the surrounding space. Even his gaze was pitch black, and he couldn't see the faint starlight up ahead. It was as if there was no end to this ghost plains. Under such circumstances, even if he was at the center, he most likely wouldn't be able to take care of too many demon race beings. As such, it was best for him to lead the way. Chapter 45-44. All of you, follow me. Xiaohua turned his head to take a look. Chen Cheng, Ma Miaoka, and Fox were following closely behind him. There were also some humans behind them. The other demons did not follow. Clearly, they were the first batch that sun-devouring great demon had mentioned. Yes, Senior. Chen Cheng and Ma Miaoka responded, and their flying speed increased slightly. However, the moment they sped up, the two whirlwinds hit the light and clouds protecting their bodies. The strength of the whirlwinds was so great that they staggered, and their flying speed decreased again. As he looked at their sorry state, Xiaohua came to an understanding. If nothing unexpected happened, then this specter plane was still a superimposition of 2 layers of space. The so-called restriction was probably the restriction of another space. When he thought of this, Xiaohua became anxious again. His Dharma eyes couldn't see through the fine lines of time, so he naturally couldn't see through the restrictions of the other space. Especially, the other space was obviously an ancient primitive space, so how could the restrictions within it be easy to deal with? Follow behind me. Xiaohua thought for a moment. He waved his hand and a layer of lightning appeared. He wanted to protect himself and the group of humans and demons, just like when they were in the strange beast enclosure. Unfortunately, the lightning mist had only rushed out a few meters when a sizzling sound came from the space. An indescribable grayish-black liquid appeared and corroded the lightning mist in a moment. Hiss! Xiaohua sucked in a breath of cold air. He raised his hand and made a grabbing motion. Ka-cha-cha! A huge hand of lightning that was dozens of meters in size appeared and fell towards the space in front of him. As Xiaohua expected, in just a few breaths of time, a grayish-black hand that was even bigger than the lightning hand fell. The huge hand of lightning was also obliterated. Senior! Chen Cheng said in a low voice from behind. Junior heard that on the ghost plane, whether it's the human race's Taoist divine abilities, Confucian techniques, or Buddhist techniques, or the demon race's demon physique, they're all restrained. Yes. Xiaohua nodded. He quietly raised his finger and a strand of demonic qi appeared. It pierced the space like a needle. Sizzling. A small, almost inaudible sound came. The demonic qi was also corroded. Oh my! Xiaohua smacked his lips and said with a bitter smile. Looks like this Xiao only has the soul technique and heavenly dragon technique left. However, these two divine abilities were not suitable to be revealed in front of these cultivators. They would have to wait for a while. Now, this Xiao will first try an escape technique. Soon after, Xiaohua seemed to be flying slowly. However, he also activated his 5 elemental escape technique, wind escape technique, lightning escape technique, etc. to see the effect. However, the results were not as optimistic. Aside from the water escape being slightly faster, there was no difference in the other escape techniques. Thus, Xiaohua activated his water escape technique and flew forward. After flying for the time it took to finish a meal, Xiaohua didn't encounter any danger, nor did he encounter any exotic beasts. Other than silence, there was only darkness. However, Xiaohua's heart didn't relax. Instead, it gave birth to a feeling of insecurity. Just like the darkness before dawn, danger was inevitable. The more there was no movement, the more it meant that danger was right in front of him. Sure enough, just as Xiaohua's eyes were dotting around, "Ow ow!" a scream sounded from behind Xiaohua and the others. Xiaohua was shocked and hurriedly stopped. However, before he could stabilize himself, whoosh! A gust of wind came from behind him. Even someone as strong as Xiaohua found it difficult to stabilize himself when faced with this gust of wind. He drifted along with the gust of wind into the distance. Its speed was actually several times faster than Xiaohua's flying speed. Spatial laws. There's actually spatial laws in this gust of wind. Xiaohua was naturally different from Chen Cheng and the others. Other than being shocked, he could naturally sense the strangeness of this gust of wind. He almost cried out in disbelief in his heart. The gust of wind in this ghost plains actually has spatial laws that can annihilate all the cultivators in the 3 continents. No wonder Su Ji's face turned pale at the mention of it. Although Xiaohua had overestimated the danger of Star Moon Palace, at this moment, he finally understood that. Even if he had encountered a spatial fragment of the immortal realm, even if he had escaped from the mouth of an immortal beast, he still underestimated Star Moon Palace. This Star Moon Palace was definitely not a place where cultivators from the mortal realm could enter. Even the immortals from the immortal realm did not have the confidence to escape unscathed. Moreover, Xiaohua completely understood why Star Moon Palace was unknown before Fairy Xingyu appeared, and only became famous after Fairy Xingyu was banished to the 3 continents. It was purely because the cultivators and demons who had entered Star Moon Palace previously did not have the ability to leave alive. Only the 2 immortals, Fairy Xingyu and Su Ji, who had special magical powers, were lucky enough to enter and leave. Moreover, it was precisely because the cultivators and demons who entered Star Moon Palace in the future followed the 2 immortals that they had a chance to leave alive. Which ancient almighty refined Star Moon Palace? Xiaohua smiled bitterly. Since cultivators from the mortal realm cannot enter, why did it appear in the mortal realm? Isn't this digging a trap for cultivators from the mortal realm? Just as Xiaohua was smiling bitterly, a huge light shadow flashed past in front of his eyes, which was the place where he had flown past and where the screams had come from. Sadly, in front of the light shadow, There were 3 demons and 1 human who were struggling in the fierce wind. They did not have any resistance at all when the light shadow passed by. Ah! Screams were immediately heard. With the help of the light shadow, Xianxia could clearly see that the bodies of the demons and humans were instantly shattered into pieces. Moreover, the pieces disappeared in a flash. Not only were they weak, even their souls were unable to escape. This light shadow was really as terrifying as a ghost. Xianxia had heard Suji's description earlier and knew how terrifying the restrictive spell was. However, when the restrictive spell was activated, Xianxia was still shocked by its power. He had never seen such a powerful restrictive spell before. But after a flash of light and shadow, the gale rose again and mixed with the gale from before. Like a storm, Chen and the others had already been blown away to God knows where. As for Xianxia, he was barely able to use the wind evasion technique to stabilize his body in the gale. After flying for half a cup of tea's time, the fierce wind disappeared again. Xianxia stood in the darkness and silently looked behind him. Previously, there had been several screams. Dozens of demons and humans had been killed without any struggle. Xianxia believed that even if he encountered them, he would not have much chance to escape. Human Mahayana realm cultivators were just ants here. Just as he was thinking, in the darkness, 3 demonic beasts and 2 humans appeared exhausted. Weren't they the fire stork, green bao, flying tiger, Chen and Ma Miaoka who had been following behind Xianxia? Xianxia was overjoyed and hurriedly called out, "Quickly!" Chen and the others were also overjoyed to hear Xiaohua's call. Just as they were about to move, a powerful restrictive spell that Xianxia had never seen before appeared out of thin air. It was as if the entire world had descended from the heavens and trapped Xianxia, Chen, Ma Miaoka, fire stork, green leopard, and flying tiger. Xianxia was shocked and his magic power surged rapidly as he tried to use the wind escape technique. Unfortunately, the magic power of a human Mahayana realm cultivator could not be mobilized at all in this restrictive spell. The starry sky nascent soul within his body was also restricted, and his 100 or so scattered nascent souls were unable to sense it at all. Immediately afterward, a huge light shadow fell, and the profound meaning of space instantly filled the surroundings. "Senior!" Chen opened his mouth, but he was unable to make a sound. Xianxia could only see Chen lips move, but Chen and Ma Miaoka's bodies had already been reduced to fragments by the laws of space. The fire stork, green leopard, and flying tiger only lasted for a few breaths of time before they also collapsed. Xiaohua's body was also flickering with golden light, and large cracks had appeared on the surface of his body as his body began to collapse. Damn it! Xiaohua was trembling with fear. How could he allow himself to be restrained? He hurriedly used the soul cultivators traveling south, north, and north technique to teleport into the distance. Even on the primitive continent, the soul cultivators' escape technique was a piece of cake, but under the restrictive spell of space, it was like wading through mud. Xiaohua tried his best to teleport, but it seemed that he had only teleported a few dozen feet. However, it was these few dozen feet that saved Xiaohua's life again. Xiaohua felt a huge light shadow flash behind him, brushing past his back as it fell. At the same time, Xiaohua also clearly sensed that where the light shadow fell, everything was reduced to nothingness. Oh no! Xiaohua was just about to breathe a sigh of relief when a sense of crisis appeared on his back. Within the space of several dozen feet around the light shadow, the powerful laws of space roared like a wave, and these laws naturally engulfed Xiaohua. The power of laws poured into Xiaohua's body without restraint. It wanted to tear apart every bit of flesh and blood in Xiaohua's body. Damn it! Seeing that the power of laws was more powerful than thousands of hands tearing his body apart, Xiaohua roared. The lightning power of the three corpses in lightning surged around his body as he forcibly resisted. At the same time, the traveling south-north technique was once again activated, and Xiaohua's body forcibly moved again. Who? Seeing that he could no longer endure and that his body was about to collapse, another gust of wind rose up. The light shadow flashed, and unexpectedly disappeared from Xiaohua's side. Xiaohua's body was swept up by the gust of wind like broken cotton, and rushed into the distance. An uncontrollable berserk force was born in the space around Xiaohua. Then, as if it had broken through several layers of space shackles, the spatial explosion and the conversion of the laws of space appeared around Xiaohua. When Xiaohua was dizzy and didn't know where he was, A huge starry sky miraculously appeared in the sky in the distance. No. No way. Xiao Hua, who had almost escaped death, looked into the distance in disbelief. His body was trembling like a sieve. Happiness had come too suddenly. Although he had inexplicably arrived at the edge of the ghost plane and was only a short distance away from the resplendent sea of stars, Xiao Hua still didn't dare to relax. He carefully looked around and sped up. Chapter 45-45. As expected by Xiao Hua, although he only used the time it took to finish a meal, behind him on the ghost plains, there were several flashes of light and shadow. The screams could no longer be heard. Xiao Hua also didn't know how many of the hundreds and thousands of Monster Clan and Human Clan would be able to make it through the ghost plains alive. Left and right, under several gusts of wind, he finally saw a huge platform. It wasn't until his body landed on the platform powerlessly that he was able to release his divine sense again. His mind could also sense the space around him. Only then did his heart completely relax. This Xiao has finally passed through the ghost plains. Damn it, this ghost plains is really the ghost plains. Xiao Hua muttered to himself as he sat down on the platform, which was a rare sight. He looked at the grayish-white plains. Right at this moment, another light and shadow appeared in the distance. Xiao Hua didn't even think about it and opened his delusion-breaker eyes. He really wanted to see what exactly those restrictions that seemed to be everywhere were. Unfortunately, Xiao Hua was ultimately disappointed. He saw that the ghost plains was the same as before, still covered in layers of fine lines. The so-called light and shadow was extremely far away from him, so how could he see it clearly? The light and shadow disappeared, and he also didn't see any restrictions. Forget it. Xiao Hua was helpless. Just as he was about to close his delusion-breaker eyes, suddenly, the entire platform shook greatly. Xiao Hua very naturally looked towards the source of the tremors. Wherever his delusion-breaker eyes passed, Xiao Hua's heart was even more shocked than the platform. Because through the fine lines, he saw a huge pillar of golden light stop on the platform in the distance, then immediately disappeared. This. Xiao Hua opened his mouth wide and cried out in disbelief. Could it be that the restrictions on the ghost plains are mobile? And they're not simply placed on the plains? However, in the next instant, another inconceivable thought appeared in his mind. On this ghost plains, there are ancient divine beasts that are even more powerful than the strange beasts in the strange beast pens? They were in another space and could move freely within Star Moon Palace. Could they easily kill everything in this space? Of course, there was another possibility. The golden pillar I saw just now was the body of a divine beast. This divine beast was too huge. It didn't know that there were humans and demons from the 3 continents in this space. It was just that when it was moving, it bumped into the humans and demons in this space. Because its law of space could pass through the layers of time, it accidentally bumped into these demons who had the strength of a sun devourer? Damn it, this is impossible. In the end, Xiao Hua was too embarrassed to think too much about it, because what he thought was truly unimaginable. Even he didn't dare to believe it. Then, Xiao Hua opened his transcendence vision and looked behind the platform where the golden pillar had disappeared. Behind the platform, there was naturally a blank space. Only the abnormally dense time fine lines could be seen, and nothing else could be seen. After closing his delirium eyes, Xiao Hua powerlessly sat back down on the platform. He stared blankly at the distant sky that shone through the darkness. What's after this platform? I wonder if that's a pillar-shaped restriction, or where the pillar-shaped divine beast went. Is that the end of the divine restriction? Perhaps the real Star Moon Palace is behind this platform? Xiao Hua's strange thoughts popped up one after another. His curiosity was like a wild grass that was popping up randomly. However, Xiao Hua was also clear in his heart that he definitely couldn't go beyond the platform. If there was such a powerful restriction or divine beast before the platform, then what about after the platform? He really didn't dare to believe that he would still have a chance to survive after going deep into the platform. After resting for a short while, there were no more flickers of light on the ghost plains. After that, more greater demons from the demonic beast race arrived one after another. These greater demons were clearly frightened by the light, and when they saw Xiao Hua, they were still in a state of shock. After the great demons bowed slightly, they also scattered and went to different places. After the great demons, there were also some humans who flew over. These humans were all pale and scared out of their wits. The human cultivators were naturally different from the great demons. When they saw Xiaohua, they were very respectful. They all stood on the platform and quietly listened to Xiaohua's instructions. Xiaohua stood up, looked around, and asked, "Are there any more human cultivators behind?" "We don't know." A tall general dressed in battle armor said, "We were arranged to be in the second group." When the restriction was triggered, the entire plain was filled with hurricanes. We and the surrounding humans were all blown away. Yes, we also didn't know why we came here. Another master dressed in Confucian robes echoed. Xiaohua lowered his head and looked at his right hand. The arrow and light that disappeared in the ghost plains appeared again, and the distance between the arrow and the light was very close. The direction the arrow pointed to was the same as the platform Xiaohua was on, and it was the opposite of where the light and shadow shook. Xiaohua thought for a while and asked, "Where are you going now?" "I'll let you know," the general said respectfully. According to the seniors who entered the Star Moon Palace earlier, this place is the deepest part of the Star Moon Palace. Behind this platform is the abyss of the void. We can't go any further. In the past, there were great demons who didn't believe it and went in to investigate. However, no one who went in has ever returned alive. Instead, to the left of this platform is the resplendent sea of stars. It's where our opportunity lies. We can find any starry sky to comprehend. We're going to take a look at the starry sky over there. At this point, the general pointed to the place where the light and shadow shook, and a trace of hope appeared on his pale face. Seeing the general's expression, and then looking at the other cultivators, they all had the same expression. Even the great Yao who had left after bowing earlier also harbored the same longing as them. Xiaohua couldn't help but sigh. He recalled Zhu Qing's words at the star-plucking tower in the Copper Pillar Nation. Everyone's opportunities are different. There are Confucian cultivators who comprehend the heavenly heart and become literary stars. There are also demon kings who comprehend the heavenly heart and become great saints. Of course, there are also Taoist seniors who break through the void and ascend. Yes, fellow Immortal Xiao, believe it or not. According to the records of my Star Moon Palace, among the few who entered the Star Moon Palace, there were indeed many who obtained the opportunity to ascend to the heavens and became the most powerful figures in the 3 continents. Presumably, the different opportunities Zhu Qing spoke of were the opportunities in the starry sky near this platform. It was no wonder that these humans and demons gave up on the opportunities in the fallen Star Palace and risked their lives to cross the ghost plains. Their purpose was to comprehend the starry sky that could allow them to reach the heavens in a single step. Looking at the many cultivators of the human race who had high aspirations, what could Xiaohua say? It was not good to have excessive ambition, but ambition was also the motivation for cultivation and the support for advancement. Xiaohua could not blame them for anything other than encouraging them. Therefore, Xiaohua raised his finger and pointed to the place the general was going and reminded him, "According to what I know, there are more restrictions there. Just now, I even saw a flash of light. If you want to go there, you have to be careful." "Yes, thank you for the reminder, Senior." The general nodded and asked again, "Then where does Senior want to go?" "Haha, I want to go there." Xiaohua pointed to another place and smiled. "That is where the Star-Picking Tower's disciples are going. I have an appointment with the master of the Star Moon Palace." "That's great." A few Confucian cultivators smiled. "Then we will follow behind Senior. I believe the master of the Star-Picking Tower will not mind." Instead, the general and some Confucian cultivators hesitated and bowed. "We will not follow Senior. You can go by yourselves. Be careful." Xiaohua nodded and said, "Actually, the Star Moon Palace is full of danger. It is better to believe in yourself than to believe in others. It is better to rely on yourself than to rely on others." Previously, on the Ghost Plains, this old man was also powerless. Seeing Xiaohua speak so sincerely, the human cultivators were all moved. After all, they were disciples of various aristocratic families, and there was no lack of opportunities to get close to the literary sage, or even the literary star. In their eyes, the supreme cultivators of the human race were all abnormally dignified. Not to mention a word, even a glance would not fall on them. How could they meet such an amiable and approachable person? Everyone looked at each other, and no one dared to say anything. Because they came from different aristocratic families, They did not dare to trust each other too much. However, in their hearts they all had a plan. Everyone bowed and saluted, and then those who should leave hurriedly left, while those who stayed behind stood respectfully at the side. The respect at this time was naturally different from before. It was from the heart and superfluous on the surface. After waiting for a while, Xiaohua recalled that Chen Cheng and the others had already said that it was impossible to pass through the ghost plains by relying on the magical powers of the human race and the demon race alone. It was only possible with the help of the hurricanes produced by triggering the restrictions. Now there was no light shadow, which meant that the restrictions had not been triggered. Naturally, there would not be any human race and the demon race coming. So Xiaohua stood up and said, "Let's go." "Yes, Senior." Everyone answered, and followed behind Xiaohua. There were restrictions on the platform that Xiaohua could not sense. Previously, when he came over from the ghost plains, he saw a huge starry sky, but when he landed on the platform, the starry sky disappeared again. After Xiaohua flew for a while, many light shadows appeared in front of him. These light shadows appeared and disappeared, and were somewhat vague. However, when Xiaohua's gaze fell on the light shadows, it felt as if his gaze was drawn into them. When Xiaohua flew for another 1,000 feet, a huge starry sky actually covered the top of his head without any obstruction. "Is this the resplendent sea of stars?" Xiaohua's figure stopped for a moment, and he lowered his head to look at his right hand. The arrow on his right hand was still pointing forward, and it did not stop. Xiaohua was just about to move when a Confucian cultivator behind him said respectfully, "Senior, this junior intends to comprehend the mystery of the starry sky here." "Good. I hope your wish will come true." Xiaohua nodded. After that Confucian cultivator saluted. He rushed into the starry sky and disappeared in a moment. Chapter 45-46. Then, Xiaohua continued to fly forward. Although he felt that he had flown very far, the starry sky above his head seemed to have never changed. If Xiaohua didn't know that he had been flying all this time, he would have suspected that he had been imprisoned in a certain place. Just as Xiaohua was about to search for Suji and the others, something flashed in front of his eyes. It was as if there were some halos flashing by. Xiaohua's heart skipped a beat. He stopped and looked up, only to see that the starry sky was different from before. Not only was it different, the strange scene in front of his eyes made Xiaohua stupefied again. In front of Xiaohua's eyes, different pieces of starry sky had miraculously appeared on the horizon. The starry sky that Xiaohua had passed by earlier had already disappeared and turned into a small piece of starry sky. Hanging at the edge of this different starry sky. Adjacent to this piece of starry sky was a faint, fuzzy halo. This halo seemed to be the boundary of the starry sky, separating the different pieces of starry sky. Although the starry sky in each piece of starry sky was bright, the brilliance that flashed was different, and the rhythm of the flashing was also different. In particular, one didn't need to distinguish them. As long as one's gaze swept across these pieces of starry sky, a feeling would emerge from the bottom of one's heart, letting one know that each piece of starry sky was different. Damn it! Xiaohua looked at this amazing, resplendent, and vast starry sky, and finally understood the origin of the resplendent sea of stars. He couldn't help but sigh and say, "This is the real work of an ancient almighty expert." Presumably, each starry sky is the starry sky of a certain realm. So many starry skies. I wonder how many realms' starry skies are there. It should be Feng Wu who came here. The starry sky he attracted in the Great Sage Hall was only the starry sky of the 3 continents. Now that he is here, he can see the starry sky of various realms. If he can attract the starry sky of these realms, then, what kind of miracle would that be? While sighing, Xiaohua's right hand began to shake. The arrowhead and the light had already merged. After the brilliance dissipated, the astrolabe appeared in Xiaohua's hand again. Without waiting for Xiaohua to raise his hand, the astrolabe transformed into a shooting star and flew towards one of the countless stars in the starry sky. Immediately after, a boundless consciousness swept over. Suji's calm voice transmitted over, "Xiaohua, you're here?" A strange expression appeared on Xiaohua's face. He nodded and replied, "Yes, Senior. Junior has finally arrived at the resplendent sea of stars. And, come over and we'll talk." Suji sensed the strangeness in Xiaohua's tone and didn't explain. Xiaohua looked at the human cultivators on the left and said, "Everyone, this old man is going to look for Master Xingyu. You all can go and comprehend by yourselves. It seems that there is no danger here. As long as you control your cultivation speed, don't be too greedy, and don't go too deep into the starry sky, you will be able to reap some benefits." Yes, I understand. Numerous cultivators were eager to give it a try when they saw the true faces of the numerous starry skies. At this moment, they listened to Xiaohua's instructions and saluted respectfully before each of them found a different starry sky and soared into the sky. Xiaohua wasn't in a hurry to find Su Ji. Instead, he released his divine sense to investigate. However, when his divine sense approached these pieces of space, he discovered something strange. Although each piece of the starry sky didn't look very big, the place where one's spiritual force landed was actually no different from a real starry sky. Spiritual force had a tendency to sink into it very easily. Xiaohua's spiritual force didn't dare to get too close. Since he couldn't get too close, he couldn't carefully explore every piece of the starry sky. Xiaohua's plan to find the 3 continents, the ruins, or the Great Desolation continent's starry sky from these thousands of starry skies was shattered again. Moreover, every time Xiaohua's spiritual force swept past a dozen pieces of starry sky, 1 or 2 pieces of starry sky would appear that he couldn't get close to them. It was as if there was a layer of restrictions sealing the starry sky. Since his exploration was fruitless, Xiaohua gave up and urged his figure to fly towards the place where Su Ji's spiritual force swept past. At this moment, the starry sky was different from the previous one. The starry sky above the horizon was like a curtain of stars. It wasn't as vast as the previous starry sky. In just half a meal's time, Xiaohua had flown over 1,000 pieces of starry sky and already saw Su Ji and the others stopped in mid-air. At this moment, Su Ji's body was completely enveloped in a faint silver brilliance. Outside the brilliance, there was something like a chain that tightly bound him from top to bottom. Even so, some immortal's coercion that ordinary cultivators couldn't resist still seeped out of the chain and surged in all directions like waves. Next to Su Ji was Fairy Xingyu. Her body was also suffused with mottled silver light, similar to Su Ji's. Their faces were covered by the silver light, so no one could see them clearly. In front of the 2 immortals, in a place extremely far away, thousands of human clan cultivators were arranged in a strange formation. They were facing a dozen pieces of starry sky and were waiting for battle. "You're finally here." Fairy Xingyu turned her head to look at Xiaohua, her tone unusually cold. "I thought you wouldn't come again." Xiaohua was already a little angry. Seeing Fairy Xingyu like this, his tone also turned cold. "It's not that I didn't want to come. It's because I encountered too many dangers in Star Moon Palace that I didn't know about. I'm even inferior to those Confucian great grandmasters and the great demons of the demon clan. The exotic beast pen, the Fubo mountain range, the Lost Star Palace, the Ghost Plain, oh, and this resplendent Star Sea. I've never heard of such wonderful names. If I hadn't been lucky, I wouldn't have been killed by the exotic beasts in the exotic beast pen or killed by the restriction of the Ghost Plain. How could I have lingered at death's door and arrived here? I've made it clear to you. As long as you pass through the transmission channel, immediately activate the star disk. We will wait for you outside the exotic beast pen and bring you here." Fairy Xingyu said faintly. "These so-called dangers are not dangers at all. But you didn't activate the star disk at all. How could we find you? It was you who wanted to take risks in these places. What does it have to do with us? You brought this upon yourself. Are you going to blame us for it? Is this the senseless risk you mentioned?" Xiaohua smiled coldly and pointed to the thousands of disciples who were on guard in the distance. "I remember that when we came in from outside the Star Moon Palace, there were tens of thousands of disciples. How many are left now?" "That's none of your business," Fairy Xingyu replied. "Before they came in, I already told them that I can't guarantee their safety. But I can guarantee that if they survive, not only will they be rewarded by Star Picking Tower, but they will also be able to improve their cultivation." "Xiaohua," Su Ji spoke. "You don't have to blame Xingyu. This was a matter of mutual consent. If they weren't willing, Xingyu would never force them. As for you, alas, it's my fault. Xingyu wanted to tell you about the dangers in the Star Moon Palace in detail, but I was afraid that you wouldn't come. So I hid it from you. In fact, on the other hand, I never thought that the dangers you mentioned earlier would pose any threat to a Mahayana realm human. The most dangerous one is the ghost plane. I also think that it can't be compared to the heaven prison at all. You were lucky enough to come out of the heaven prison. The ghost plane is just a piece of cake. At this point, Suji raised his eyes to look at the dozen or so stars on the left. Although he couldn't see the expression on his face, Xiaohua could still feel the deep regret in Suji's tone. Since you feel that everything we have done is unfair to you, you can give up. We won't force you. Suji. Fairy Xingyu was shocked. Are you crazy? At this point how can you say this? In your current situation, how can you wait until the next opening of the Star Moon Palace? Xingyu, do you still remember the agreement you and I made when you formed the Star Moon Palace? Suji didn't answer Fairy Xingyu's question. Fairy Xingyu was stunned and replied without hesitation. Of course I know. Isn't that your 3 uncertainties? First, you're not allowed to interfere with the cultivation of the 3 continents. Second, you're not allowed to get involved in the disputes of the 3 continents. Third, you're not allowed to use your magical powers to bully the weak. At this point, Fairy Xingyu understood. She glared fiercely at Xiaohua and didn't say anything else. Suji said faintly to Xiaohua, Xiaohua, did you hear that? Do you think it would be difficult for us to attack the Immortal Palace directly with our magical powers, kill Immortal Emperor Go Chen, and then support the primordial chaos ancestor to become the leader of the Dao sect? Ahem. Xiaohua touched his nose and looked up at the dozens of stars in front of him. He answered without answering the question. By the way, which of these dozens of stars has a passage? In fact, Xiaohua had already had some ideas outside the Star Moon Palace. However, he also knew that even though Fairy Xingyu and Suji were both immortals, and Suji was an upright and plain-spoken immortal world's law enforcer, they were still humans after all. It was inevitable that they would have their own plans. They didn't talk about the situation in the Star Moon Palace in detail, and Xiaohua didn't care. In particular, both humans and demons on the 3 continents knew that the Star Moon Palace was useful for humans and demons at the 7th level of essence power. Xiaohua hadn't expected the Star Moon Palace to be so dangerous that even an immortal like Suji would be injured. That was why he was enraged when his life was threatened again and again. After Suji's explanation, Xiaohua, who had always been easygoing, put himself in Suji's and Fairy Xingyu's shoes and understood their difficulties. His resentment had long disappeared. Humph. Fairy Xingyu snorted coldly. Didn't you want to leave? No one wants you to stay. Hee hee. Xiaohua laughed. I want to leave, but I can't bear to part with those cultivation techniques, immortal ink slips, and the like. Little money grubber. Fairy Xingyu also scolded with a smile. Suji didn't say much. He pointed at the dozens of stars and said, Many of the stars in the resplendent sea of stars will change their positions and constellations every time the Star Moon Palace appears. The first time we found a star with the aura of the immortal world, it was near here. However, every time we came in, it was not in its original position. Of course, the distance it moved each time was not too far. Therefore, if nothing unexpected happens, that star should be among these dozens of stars. As for which star it is, we'll know when the aura of the immortal world appears in a while. Chapter 45-48. At this point, Suji seemed to have thought of something. He looked at Xiaohua and said, By the way, speaking of the 3 forbids, Xiaohua, if you have time in the future, go to the Bronze Pillar Nation. No, it's not the Bronze Pillar Nation anymore. It's the Jade Rock Nation, right? Go to the Seven Suns Temple there and take a look at your Dao sect bloodsteel. Seven Suns Temple? Xiaohua was stunned and asked, What's wrong with the Dao sect bloodsteel? You'll know when you see it. Suji didn't want to say more. He only replied, I've already said the 3 forbids. What else do you need me to say? All right. Xiaohua was speechless. He then looked around and asked, Senior, you've been waiting for a long time, right? After all, he had spent a lot of time in other places. Yes. Suji nodded. I've waited longer than before. Xiaohua hesitated and said, You didn't miss it because you were delayed when you came in, right? Fairy Xingyu spat. Don't jinx it. Can't you say something nice? Haha. Xiaohua looked around and asked again, What's beyond this starry sky? What is it? Senior, have you seen it? If it were you, would you dare to go? Fairy Xingyu asked. Of course I wouldn't. Xiaohua answered with a smile. But senior, you're an immortal. No matter what, you're braver than me. Our strength is limited because of our physical bodies, so we don't dare to go too deep into the Star Moon Palace. Suji replied, the places you've been to are the places we've been to on our third and fourth trips. From the fifth time onwards, we've basically followed the original route and directly looked for this starry sky. As for what's beyond the starry sky and the platform, we don't know. Of course, as far as I know, many demons have gone to the platform, but none of them have ever returned. Oh, the killing thunder is on the other side of the starry sky. It seems to lead to the platform. With your cultivation, you should be able to get a little closer. If you're lucky and don't encounter the thunder, you should be able to see the secret behind the platform. Curiosity killed the cat. Fairy Xingyu reminded him. You're already a Mahayana realm cultivator. As long as you cultivate steadily, you'll be able to ascend to the celestial realm sooner or later. I suggest that you don't explore it. Boom! At this moment, the entire starry sky seemed to tremble. A powerful aura of the immortal realm emerged from somewhere in the starry sky like a gale and crashed down. Not to mention the thousands of cultivators in the sky who were on guard. Even Xiaohua's body trembled and his knees almost buckled. On the other hand, the silver light around Suji and Fairy Xingyu suddenly flourished, and their figures also expanded by several feet. Fortunately, the aura of the celestial realm was like a gust of wind. After it blew, the power of the stars and moons appeared in the starry sky, forcefully washing away the aura. The deterrent force gradually disappeared. However, even so, the thousands of cultivators were still paralyzed in the air, unable to move for a long time. That starry sky. As soon as the aura of the celestial realm disappeared, Suji raised his hand and pointed to the farthest starry sky. As he spoke, his figure flashed and he rushed to the starry sky. Fairy Xingyu was not in a hurry. She flew to the front of the cultivators and waved her hand. Thousands of starlight rays appeared from her hand and fell between the cultivators' eyebrows. In a moment, these cultivators all stood up in the air. Disciples, it's that starry sky. Fairy Xingyu raised her voice and said, you can enter the starry sky with your own perception of the starry sky. If you can find the door to the starry sky, you will naturally appear from the starry sky. Even if you can't find the door to the starry sky, you don't have to worry. When the Star Moon Palace closes, you will still be pushed out of the starry sky by the Star Moon Palace. Moreover, whether you can find the door to the starry sky or not, the comprehension in this starry sky will definitely be of great help to your cultivation. Yes, we understand. The cultivators answered excitedly because what Fairy Xingyu said was true. The cultivators who had entered this starry sky to search for the door, whether they succeeded or not, had gained a lot in their cultivation. Okay, disciples. Follow me in. Fairy Xingyu did not dare to delay too much. After she finished speaking, her figure turned into a silver-white starlight and rushed into the starry sky, disappearing in a moment. The thousands of disciples also flew over from various places and entered the starry sky. Xiaohua flew to Suji's side. Under the pressure of the silver light, Xiaohua could not get too close. He looked at Suji's figure, which was several times taller than him, and said in a low voice, Senior, let's go in too. Xiaohua. Suji did not move. Instead, he said in a low voice, do you understand what I said earlier? I hope. You don't hate me. Of course not. Xiaohua said with a smile. This is my temper. When I have some grievances, I want to say them out loud. In fact, if I say them out loud, I will forget about them. That's for the best. Suji nodded. In the future, you will understand. Xiaohua was a little surprised. However, before he could ask again, Suji's figure flashed and disappeared. Xiaohua was stunned again. He suddenly came to a realization. Didn't the Star Moon Palace have timelines? Wouldn't Suji's teleportation break through the law of time? Xiaohua wanted to open his Dharma Eye to take a look, but he had used his Dharma Eye too much today. Xiaohua did not know if there would be a starry sky maze in a while, so he gave up on the idea and used his escape technique to rush into the starry sky. The feeling was similar to the last time he flew into the starry sky. When he first started to fly, the starry sky was far away. However, he did not know when, but the brilliant starry sky had quietly covered the sky above Xiaohua's head completely. In this strange starry sky, every star was so bright. Each star exuded an inexplicably powerful power of the stars and the moon. Moreover, there was a huge star halo at the edge of each starry sky. It was like a starburst fluctuation overflowing the entire starry sky. Along with this fluctuation, the star halo swayed slightly like a silk handkerchief. Strands of immortal qi, which Xiaohua was already familiar with, came crashing down from this fluctuation. Although there was not much immortal qi, it was enough to make thousands of cultivators bow down. These cultivators activated their divine abilities one by one. As they tried their best to resist, they formed a certain Dharma array. Fairy Xingyu was standing on this Dharma array. When she saw Su Ji and Xiaohua enter the starry sky, she raised her hand and took out her star shuttle again. Puff! A mouthful of immortal qi fell and the entire star shuttle exploded again, turning into thousands of star fragments that fell on the Dharma array. Please, everyone. Fairy Xingyu took a deep breath and said. Hearing Fairy Xingyu being so polite, the cultivators of the human clan said in unison, We understand. We will definitely do our best to serve Senior. Go. Fairy Xingyu issued an order. Thousands of star fragments soared into the sky and landed in various parts of the starry sky. The thousands of disciples also flew into the starry sky, following the star fragments into the starry sky and disappearing once again. After the cultivators left, Fairy Xingyu flew in front of Su Ji. She glanced at him but did not say anything. Just like Su Ji, she looked up at the bright starry sky and the star fragments that were still shining brightly in the starry sky. After a long while, the star fragments disappeared. Not a single cultivator appeared in the starry sky. Xiaohua knew that the two of them were a little nervous. He asked in a low voice, Senior, is this the starry sky of the immortal world? If I'm not mistaken, it should be a part of the starry sky of the immortal world. Su Ji replied, The immortal world is almost boundless and the starry sky is huge. I'm not sure where this starry sky is. Do you know, Xingyu? Of course I know. Fairy Xingyu replied, But don't worry, I won't tell you. It's up to you. Xiaohua said with a smile, When I go to the immortal world in the future, I'll find it myself. After a while, there were still no star fragments. Su Ji, Fairy Xingyu, and Xiaohua were a little anxious, let alone time. Xiaohua thought for a moment and asked again, Senior, when I passed by some starry skies earlier, many of them could not be entered by divine thought. Is there a passage to the immortal world? The starry skies that cannot be entered by divine thought require special means. What the naked eye can see is just an illusion array. Su Ji replied, As for whether there is a passage to the immortal world, I don't know. However, Xingyu and I have checked many starry skies that can be entered by divine thought. There is no passage that we are looking for. Oh, I remember now. Xiaohua thought of something again. He waved his hand and took out the Kunlun mirror. As the light vibrated, he took out the black box he had obtained from the Heaven Prison, and the black box he had just obtained from the Lost Star Palace. He asked, Senior, I just obtained 2 things in the Lost Star Palace. Can you help me take a look at them? Why are you so nosy? Fairy Xingyu was a little impatient. Let me take a look. Su Ji was not surprised. He raised his hand and the 2 boxes fell into his hands. Swish, swish, swish. As soon as the 2 boxes fell into Su Ji's silver hands, layers of thumb-sized inscriptions appeared. These inscriptions rushed toward the silver light crazily, and a sound like a surging sand tide was heard. Celestial Imperial Equipment? Fairy Xingyu was stunned and asked curiously, There is a Celestial Imperial Equipment of Confucian cultivators in the Lost Star Palace? How come I haven't seen it even though I've been there several times? Xiaohua shrugged and curled his lips, saying, I'm lucky. There's nothing I can do about it. Hee hee. Fairy Xingyu snorted and said, It's not until today that I know what it means to be shameless. I'll try. Su Ji said as he scanned the box with his mind. However, I'm not sure if I can break this thing. It doesn't matter. Xiaohua said with a smile. It's just something I picked up. Senior, please feel free to try. Su Ji raised his hand and threw the 2 boxes out. Then he raised both hands at the same time. Kacha kacha. Amidst the sound of thunder, Suji's two arms turned into two silver thunderbolts. Woo woo. At the same time, a hurricane appeared in the whole space. The scattered celestial chi fell into the thunderbolts. Suji. Fairy Xingyu was shocked. You. How can you activate the celestial chi? Do you want to die? Suji did not answer Fairy Xingyu. Instead, he moved his body and the silver light around him began to flow rapidly. Kacha kacha. The chains that bound the silver light made a rough sound. Boom. The two silver lights rushed out of the chains and fell into the thunderbolts. At the same time, the thunderbolts condensed thousands of feet of lightning in the nearby space. Chapter 45-49. Kacha. Kacha. As Suji waved his hands, two thunderbolts fell on the box. The inscriptions that had calmed down and turned into nothingness surged out again. However, as soon as the inscriptions appeared, they were immediately split in half by the thunderbolts. Woo-woo! Bursts of space roared around the box. Circles of whirlpools gushed out from the void and rushed into the box. The inscriptions on the armor fell from the box like dead tadpoles. Then, the fist-sized box made a rumbling sound and began to expand. In a moment, it turned into a coffin that was more than 100 feet in size. As for the box Xianxia had left behind in the Fallen Star Palace, after cutting off a layer of restrictions, it had turned into a black ruler that was 1 foot long and 2 fingers wide. This. Xianxia was a little stunned. He thought that the box from the heaven prison would contain something extremely magical, but he really did not expect it to be a coffin. The coffin was pitch black, and it was unknown what material it was made of. The 8 edges of the coffin were engraved with 8 lifelike dragons that sealed the entire coffin tightly. Looking at the front and back of the coffin, there was a ferocious-looking dragon head and a ferocious-looking dragon tail. 9 dragons' coffin? Seeing the dragon scales made of inexplicable inscriptions and the tadpole-shaped clouds between the 9 dragons, even Suji and Fairy Xingyu could not help but exclaim, how could the 9 dragons' coffin appear in the 3 continents? Xiaohua felt guilty and hurriedly asked, Senior, 9 dragons' coffin. What is this? 9 dragons' coffin. It's an item of the heavenly court. After thinking for a moment, Fairy Xingyu replied, it's usually used to hold corpses. Of course, most of the time, it's also a secret item to hold the heavenly court's book Immortals. As for what's inside, it's not something we can know. Seniors, you can't open it? Xiaohua was a little disappointed. Yes. Suji nodded and said, the 9 dragons' coffin suppression can only be opened by Earth Immortals of the heavenly court. Moreover, one must have the special skills of the heavenly court's book Immortals. I'm afraid we can't open it. Immortal Emperor Go Chen can't open it? Xiaohua asked. Of course. In this realm, the highest level of cultivation is at the 9th grade of essence energy. How can it be opened? Fairy Xingyu nodded. After a while, she smiled again and said, by the way, if you are lucky enough to find that book Immortal, there may be a way. Tieske. Xiaohua waved his hand and said with a face full of disdain, why would I make myself unhappy for no reason? Then Xiaohua pointed at the black ruler and asked, what about this? Fairy Xingyu waved her hand and took the black ruler. After examining it for a while, she handed it to Suji and said, this thing is a little strange. I can't tell what it is. What about you? Suji raised his hand and received the black ruler. After looking at it for a moment, he similarly shook his head and passed the black ruler to Xiaohua, saying, I also can't discern the origin of this item. If he was not wrong, it should be an ancient divine item. You're fated to obtain it, so take care of yourself. All right. Xiaohua helplessly put the black ruler and the 9 dragons' coffin suppression into his space and said with a wry smile, it seems that I can only wait until I have the chance. The things in the Star Moon Palace are all extraordinary. Since you're fated to obtain them, you should cherish them. Don't underestimate them. Suji exhorted again. Yes, I understand. Xiaohua hurriedly agreed. However, the treasures in his space were too precious. How could he take care of them one by one? Fairy Xingyu looked at the still starry sky and said in a low voice, Suji, until now, No cultivator has revealed their star shatterer. I'm afraid we won't be able to find anything today. Not necessarily, Suji replied. His tone was naturally filled with disappointment. Senior. Xiaohua's heart skipped a beat and he said, You said before that if this starry sky is sealed by divine sense, then what the naked eye sees is an illusion array. If this starry sky is not sealed by divine sense, then what the naked eye sees is real, right? You also said that you need cultivators who are very sensitive to the power of the stars and the moon to find the passage to the immortal realm in this starry sky. Could it be that this starry sky is also an illusion array? This starry sky is a starry sky maze. Suji replied, The passage to the immortal realm is inside the maze. Alas, yes. Fairy Xingyu also sighed and said, The whole starry sky is a big array. Every time we come here it changes. We have broken through it several times. Only the first time we were lucky enough to see the door of the passage. The other times, we didn't even see the door. As for the first time, Suji continued, we were not prepared enough and Xingyue couldn't cooperate with me, so we couldn't open the door. A huge starry sky maze? Xiaohua squinted and looked at the stars in the sky. He was eager to try. Xiaohua was born with a sense of direction in the void and had broken through many void mazes. However, this was the first time he had seen such a huge starry sky maze. Seeing such a mysterious star array, he couldn't help but say in a low voice, Seniors, if you trust me, please follow me. Oh right. Fairy Xingyu suddenly realized. Xiaohua, you are also a cultivator who passed the selection of Xingyue. Now that your strength has skyrocketed, I have forgotten about this. You take the lead. Suji replied, Xingyue and I will follow behind. You don't have to feel burdened. Even if we don't succeed this time, there will be a next time. Suji's words were clearly meant to comfort him. Xiaohua understood that Suji's divination skills had already predicted that this would be the last time the Star Moon Palace would be opened. With Suji's injuries, he would not be able to find a suitable body for the time being. How would he be able to last until the next opening of the Star Moon Palace? Therefore, Xiaohua urged his body to fly toward the starry sky without saying a word. As the starry sky approached, Xiaohua's gaze fell on it. Boom! There was a huge tremor and a roar in Xiaohua's mind. The whole starry sky was huge. Now, with the roar, it expanded again. It was almost vast. Xiaohua could barely see the whole starry sky with his naked eye. No wonder Fairy Xingyu wanted to find thousands of cultivators. Xiaohua thought to himself. An ordinary cultivator can't search the whole starry sky. They can only find thousands of cultivators and each of them can take a piece. But, if each of them takes a piece, won't these cultivators become a huge mountain that can't see? How can they find the passage to the star array? I guess Fairy Xingyu had no choice but to come up with this plan. Xiaohua looked at the starry sky without blinking. His eyes were also full of stars. These stars rotated and changed with his eyes. After a while, Xiaohua's eyes lit up. He waved his hand and said, Senior, please come with me. Fairy Xingyu could hardly believe her ears when she heard Xiaohua's confidence. She hurriedly moved and landed behind Xiaohua. Suji followed beside her at a moderate pace. In the starry sky and the void, Xiaohua's confidence was self-evident. In Xiaohua's eyes, such a vast starry sky maze was like a dharma array with ease. He flew leisurely in the starry sky without any hesitation or thought. Although they had flown for an hour and the entire starry sky still looked like a starry sky, Suji and Fairy Xingyu were ecstatic. This was because the immortal spirit qi was getting denser and denser. In the end, when Xiaohua rushed toward a star and was about to stop, Fairy Xingyu said ecstatically, That's right, that's right. It's here. I came here with Suji for the first time. We just have to turn right. Wait. Before Fairy Xingyu could finish speaking, Xiaohua hurriedly stopped her. Senior, you have to fly backward now. Why do we have to fly backward? Fairy Xingyu was really puzzled. Yes, Xiaohua said resolutely. We have to fly backward. Don't ask me how I know. Senior, just follow me. As he spoke, he flew forward a few feet, stopped, and flew backward without looking back. After flying for a few feet, before he could get close to Suji, He saw the space around him distort strangely. Xiaohua's figure fell into this distorted space. Good. Even someone as calm as Su Ji could not help but clap his hands. Fairy Xingyu was also dumbfounded. She shook her head helplessly and could only praise, "Amazing, amazing." Then, the two of them flew to where Xiaohua was and flew backward again. When the distorted space shook, the starry sky was still the same starry sky. However, in front of the three of them, there was a huge yin-yang fish pattern slowly rotating in the starry sky. As it rotated, waves of immortal qi seeped out from the galaxy that condensed into the pattern. Fairy Xingyu's expression changed slightly when she scanned it. She said anxiously, "Quick, Suji, we don't have much time left. The immortal qi has begun to weaken. I'm afraid the passage inside is about to close." Su Ji did not dare to be negligent. He flew toward the yin-yang fish and said to Xiaohua, "Xiaohua, I still need to borrow the power of your thunder cultivation." "No problem." Xiaohua was overjoyed when he saw the yin-yang fish. He nodded and said, "Senior, please instruct me. I will do my best." Su Ji and Xiaohua flew to the star array of the yin-yang fish. Su Ji pointed at the rotating yin-yang fish and said, "I will be in charge of the yang side and you will be in charge of the yin side. First, we have to stop the rotation of the yin-yang fish and then activate the power of thunder to reverse it. The moment it is reversed, the starry sky gate will open and the passage to the immortal world will be inside." Although Xiaohua had some doubts, he did not have time to ask Su Ji how he knew. "Senior, please." Xiaohua raised his hand and gestured. Su Ji's figure landed above the yin-yang fish and his body slowly rotated with the yin-yang fish. Xiaohua followed closely behind and stood opposite Su Ji. Under their feet was the black and white star. The star looked very strange. It was obviously a star, but when one looked at it, it seemed to be another starry sky. One could not see the end of it. "Rise." Su Ji raised his hands and two thunderbolts condensed into a water-blue ball suspended above the yin-yang fish. Chapter 45-50. Quick. Xiaohua also hugged his hands in the air like a Tai Chi pushing hands. A huge 9 heavens divine thunder condensed and hung above the yin fish. "Break." Su Ji glanced at Xiaohua and roared. The thunder in his hand turned into a sharp sword and pierced the young fish. Xiaohua was not slow either. Almost at the same time, he also pierced the 9 heavens divine thunder into the yin fish. Boom. The yin-yang fish shook. The entire starry sky shook, and all the stars emitted brilliant starlight. "Stop!" Su Ji shouted again. The silver light around him shone brightly, and the dragon-like thunder poured into the young fish. "Fall!" Xiaohua roared. The 9 heavens divine thunder, which was not inferior to Su Ji's, also surged into the yin fish. Crack, crack, crack. Another obscure sound was heard. The huge yin-yang fish indeed showed signs of stopping. However, just as a look of joy appeared on Fairy Xingyu's face, crack! With a crisp sound, the 9 heavens divine thunder activated by Xiaohua broke out of thin air. The power of the backlash hit Xiaohua's chest like a big hand. Xiaohua could not maintain his figure. With a boom, he rushed into the sky. Fairy Xingyu was shocked. Her figure swayed and landed beside Xiaohua. She raised her hand to support him and looked at Xiaohua's face again. "Senior." Xiaohua smiled bitterly. "Your power of thunder is too overbearing. I can't match it. Therefore, the yin-yang fish can't be balanced and can't stop at all. This is the least amount of force needed to stop the yin-yang fish." Su Ji was not surprised. He said faintly, "Why don't I try to reduce the force again?" Xiaohua responded. The two of them activated the power of thunder again. Sure enough, their forces were balanced this time. The yin-yang fish showed signs of stopping. However, it was just a trend. It did not really stop. The two of them had no choice but to stop and look at each other. "This is a dilemma." Xiaohua frowned. "If you use too much force, I can't cooperate. If you use too little force, the yin-yang fish can't stop. What should we do? Why don't I try again?" Fairy Xingyu looked at Su Ji and said, "My power of the stars and moon is more feminine. It can complement your power of thunder. Let's try it. Suji said helplessly. The power of the stars and moon is too soft. It can't restrain the power of the stars in the yin-yang fish. I'm afraid that my lightning power alone won't be able to stop the yin-yang fish. Don't be impatient. Xiaohua's heart stirred as he asked, Senior, is there also a difference between yin and yang in the power of thunder? Of course. Suji nodded and said, the power of lightning is not only divided into yin and yang, it is also divided into heavenly stem and earthly branch, and it is also divided into the 5 elements, such as Gengxin metal lightning, Jia wood lightning, Bingding fire lightning, Wuji earth lightning, etc. These are all recorded in Senior's unstoppable thunderbolt. Xiaohua interrupted Suji's words and asked. Yes. Suji replied. Then. Xiaohua raised his hand, activating the dark underworld devil lightning as he asked, is this considered soft lightning? Suji was shocked. This is the dark nether devil lightning? Senior doesn't need to care about the lightning power. Senior only needs to say whether or not it can be used. Xiaohua's expression didn't change as he asked, not giving Suji a chance to ask more questions. Of course. Suji replied meaningfully. Let's try again. Xiaohua flew onto the yin fish again. Boom. Suji and Xiaohua attacked again at the same time. The yin-yang fish finally began to slow down as it trembled. Good. Fairy Xianxia stopped being surprised and couldn't help but be secretly happy. However, at this moment, boom! The dark underworld devil lightning in Xiaohua's hand was cut into several pieces again. Xiaohua's figure was not sent flying this time. Instead, he was dispirited on the spot, the brilliance around his body dimming. Xiaohua! Fairy Xianxia was also moved and called out with concern. Just as she was about to fly over, Xiaohua stood up stubbornly and said in a hoarse voice, I understand, Senior. Although it is a balance of yin and yang, the power of my yin thunder is too weak and can't match Senior's yang. Yes. Suji's voice was also moved. He whispered, so your injury is more serious than last time. Forget it. Fairy Xianxia looked at the immortal qi in the yin-yang fish that was about to disappear and said, Xiaohua, don't try again. You can cultivate for another 1,000 years. Let's wait for the next time. No need. Xiaohua raised his hand and covered his chest. He activated the 5 qis unification technique and said, I know how to cooperate with Senior. Your dermic powers are insufficient. This is the fundamental problem. Fairy Xianxia shook her head and said, it can't be forced. Senior. Xiaohua ignored Fairy Xianxia and flew up. He said to Suji, are you ready? Yes. Suji was really moved. He nodded and didn't say anything to dissuade him. At this time, only men understood men's hearts. Women had to step aside. Rise. Xiaohua closed his eyes slightly and raised his hand to slap the top of his head. Boom! The 5 qis righteous thunder, 9 heavens divine thunder, 3 corpses yin thunder, and dark underworld devil lightning were unleashed at the same time. A 4-colored hand made a trembling sound and fell toward the yin fish. When the power of life and death from the 4-colored hand fell, all the stars in the yin fish immediately dimmed. This. Even Suji was dumbfounded, let alone Fairy Xianxia. He stuttered a few words and then came to his senses. He hurriedly activated the power of thunder and landed on the yang fish. Woo woo woo. There was a sound that sounded like the wailing of ghosts and the howling of wolves. The entire starry sky shook. The yin-yang fish, which had been rotating since ancient times, slowly stopped and gradually became still. The moment it stopped, the entire starry sky dimmed, and all the halos of the stars turned into still whirlpools. Open! Suji and Xiaohua looked at each other and roared at the same time. As the two of them activated their immortal qi and dermic powers, boom! The entire starry sky shone brightly. Countless whirlpools rotated in reverse, and the yin-yang fish also rotated in reverse. In just the moment of the reversal, boom! Xiaohua's figure was sent flying again. Countless space fragments flashed around him. Streaks of thick blood marks appeared silently and strangely on his body. Whoosh! At the same time that Xiaohua was sent flying by the backlash, the yin-yang fish opened up like a rainstorm. A water-like silver light gushed out from inside. Fairy Xingyu was overjoyed. However, she did not rush in. Instead, she raised her hand and supported Xiaohua's falling figure. Her right hand wrapped around Xiaohua's waist and they flew into the yin-yang fish that had opened up. When they entered the yin-yang fish, Fairy Xingyu's left hand took out an item from her waist and stuffed it into Xiaohua's arms. She whispered in his ear, "Humph, seeing how you put in so much effort, Zhai Xinglu and Moon Embracing Palace will benefit you." Seeing that Fairy Xingyu had finally given him Xingyu, Xiaohua was overjoyed. However, how could he be happy at this time? He had used all his dermic powers to help Suji forcefully reverse the yin-yang fish and break the starry sky restriction with the help of the four-colored thunderbolt. However, all his dermic powers could not match Suji's thunderbolt power. He had only relied on the Tao of life and death in the four-colored thunderbolt to catch up with Suji in terms of realm and dermic powers and barely reverse the yin-yang fish. Xiaohua could handle it with ease if he fought with others. However, compared to Suji's immortal spirit power, it was impossible for him to retract and release it freely. The moment the yin-yang fish was broken, he would immediately suffer a backlash from his dermic powers. Although he was not seriously injured, it was difficult for him to move for a while. Senior. Xiaohua used the 5 Qis unifications technique to repair his internal organs and Taoist cultivation methods to condense his nascent soul. He opened his mouth again, but he didn't send a voice transmission. He merely mouthed, "Aren't you afraid that Senior Su will be jealous of us being so intimate?" Humph. Fairy Xingyu pursed her lips and sent a voice transmission. "In terms of lifespan, I can be your aunt for many generations. What is there to be jealous about?" See. Fairy Xingyu had sent a voice transmission to Xiaohua, but when she took Xiaohua through the yin-yang fish and saw the strange scene in the starry sky, she couldn't help but scream again. However, the starry sky behind the yin-yang fish was different from before. The stars in the starry sky were no longer bright stars. Instead, they were huge spheres. Some of the spheres were like blazing fireballs, emitting light. Some of the spheres were like water mist and ice chips. Some of the spheres had rings formed from huge amounts of crushed stones. Some of the planets had 2 or 3 small spheres revolving around them. Most of the spheres were suspended in the air by themselves, without any light or shadow. It was not the dazzling starlight that Xiaohua had seen with his naked eye. In the vast and boundless starry sky, another irregular crack appeared in an area of tens of thousands of miles. Silver light poured out from this crack, and celestial spiritual energy rushed out like a heavenly river. It endlessly landed in this part of the starry sky, and wherever the silver light passed, it formed a pillar of light. At the bottom of the light column was an iron-green planet. The planet had been penetrated by the light column, and many cracks had appeared on the edge of the planet. The immortal spirit Qi had covered tens of thousands of miles of space. Compared to the space in other places, this space had obviously collapsed. When the brilliance of the light ball shone on it, it was extremely distorted. This is not the passage to the immortal realm. Fairy Xingyu was surprised and shouted again, "This is a crack in the immortal realm." That's right. Su Zhizao flew in and understood with a sweep of his mind. He said calmly, "This should be a crack that appeared on the surface of the immortal realm when the Star Moon Palace appeared. However, even if it is a crack, you can still return to the immortal realm through this crack. Xingyue, hurry up. The crack is really shrinking. If we don't speed up, when the crack disappears, our efforts will be in vain." Chapter 45-51. Okay. Fairy Xingyu replied. She released her hand and placed Xiaohua in the air. She glanced at Xiaohua and said, "Xiaohua, the light pillar of the immortal realm is in front of you. You can't get close without an immortal spiritual body. Thank you for your help. Suji and I will wait for you in the immortal realm." Xiaohua nodded with a smile and replied, "Don't say anything. Let's go quickly. When I ascend to the immortal realm, I will immediately find you and Senior Su." "It's a deal." Fairy Xingyu knew that time was of the essence, so she didn't say anything more. She nodded at Xiaohua and flew to Suji. "Let's go." Suji hesitated for a moment and also moved. At this time, Fairy Xingyu didn't have to worry about anything. The silver light around her shone brightly, and an oppressive pressure appeared. Her figure swayed and she fell into the silver light in the distance. Suji also let out a long roar. His figure flashed and appeared at the edge of the silver light. Fairy Xingyu fell into the silver light, and her figure began to slowly expand. The silver light around her merged with the light pillar, and Princess Baihua's body was revealed again. Princess Baihua was still beautiful, but her body was riddled with holes. As the silver light fell, her flesh and blood were cut off piece by piece, turning into wisps of green smoke. A light cluster of thousands of feet in size gradually emerged in the light pillar. In the light cluster, a silver mark was particularly eye-catching. The mark absorbed the immortal spiritual qi and shone brightly. An incomparably mysterious outline of a body gradually emerged. Xiaohua, thank you very much. Fairy Xingyu's voice sounded like thunder. Suji, let's go. See you in the immortal realm. Xiaohua smiled and urged his magic power to resist the pressure of the immortal realm. He raised his hand and gestured. But at this moment, Suji's faint voice sounded, Xingyu, you can go by yourself. I won't go back to the immortal realm with you. Ah? Not only was Xiaohua shocked, but Fairy Xingyu was also stunned on the spot. The light around her flickered incessantly. Why don't you go back to the immortal realm? Fairy Xingyu looked at the slowly closing crack and hurriedly asked, You and I have been busy for so many years. Now that we have finally reached the edge of the immortal world, why don't you go back? Xingyu. Suji opened his mouth, his tone as calm as ever. When I saved you back then, I was already heavily injured because I fought with the Heavenly Court's book Immortal. Why hasn't he recovered after so many years? How is this possible? Fairy Xingyu shouted. You did take a blow for me, but how could that injury not be healed? You haven't said anything for so many years. Have you recovered? I was lying to you. I didn't want you to worry. Suji said, that demonized book Immortal was very powerful. He directly injured my soul and touched my immortal mark. You should know that immortal mark. How can it be repaired in the lower realm? All these years, I've been searching for spiritual items that can mend the immortal mark. I did the same in the heavenly sanctum. But this kind of spiritual item doesn't exist in the 3 continents. It's hard to find even in the celestial world. So, even if I'm in the Pillar of Light now, it'll be difficult for me to return to the immortal dimension. How? How is this possible? You're not lying to me, are you? Fairy Xingyu was dumbfounded and murmured. Fairy Xingyu was dumbfounded. Xiaohua was even more dumbfounded. He didn't understand, but he knew. Because Suji was injured, he couldn't return to the celestial world even if there was a passageway to it. In order to let Fairy Xingyu return with peace of mind, he had been hiding this news. In an instant, Xiaohua thought of many things. Many things from before seemed to be clear to him. He couldn't help but look at Fairy Xingyu, who was covered in silver light. Like Xiaohua, Fairy Xingyu's previous details had already emerged in her mind. Because Suji couldn't return, he gave his inheritance and the inheritance of Qingqiu Mountain to Xiaohua without holding anything back. Even when entering the Xingyue Palace, Suji activated the immortal qi at all costs to stimulate the formation of the Starry Passage. Even when he found the corpses of the 2 celestial masters in the Yiqiong Heavenly Mansion, Suji didn't take any of them and let Fairy Xingyu keep them. On the one hand, it was because he was protecting Xingyu and wanted to give all the credit to her. On the other hand, he couldn't return to the celestial world, so he could only let Xingyu take these things away. At this time, Fairy Xingyu also remembered that Suji had also been looking for something in the Yiqiong Heavenly Mansion. Fairy Xingyu didn't understand at the time, but now she realized that Suji was looking for healing elixirs. Although Suji knew that it was just an extravagant hope, he still didn't want to give up. Thinking of this, Fairy Xingyu recalled all kinds of things. When they were in the hidden immortal continent, Suji was indifferent to her and deliberately created a barrier between them. He even kept his distance in the flower realm. It wasn't that Suji didn't want to chat with her, but that he didn't want her to fall too deep. Some of the words at that time were Suji's farewell words. Although Suji really wanted to harden his heart, he couldn't in the end. His words were ambiguous. At that time, Fairy Xingyu was unhappy and didn't quite understand. Now, she understood Suji's painstaking efforts. When she thought of how Su Ji risked his life to fight the immortal beast in the Yiqiong heavenly mansion, Fairy Xingyu couldn't help but tremble. Fairy Xingyu shouted, "Su Ji! You! How can you do this to me?" Hearing Fairy Xingyu's cries, Su Ji couldn't help but feel heartbroken. A hero's breath was short, and love was long. The feelings that had accompanied him for so many years turned into tenderness at this moment. Kacha! With a burst of cracking sounds, the chains that had previously bound the silver light broke inch by inch. Su Ji's figure also turned into 1,000 feet in size. However, after the silver light disappeared, Su Ji's body, which was only left with white bones, was revealed. This body was melting at an extremely fast speed. However, after the white bones disappeared, the silver spots that should have been eye-catching in the light cluster that Su Ji had transformed into were now dim and even mottled. When the immortal chi fell, the whole spots were trembling. At the same time, Su Ji's silvery outline gradually sank in the silver light pillar. He couldn't fly up at all like Fairy Xingyu. Seeing Su Ji's immortal mark like this, how could Fairy Xingyu not know that Su Ji was telling the truth? She flew down and hugged Su Ji's entire body. Her sobs reverberated through the entire starry sky like rain. "Su Ji, you really deserve to die. How could you make me fall in love with you so much? And you abandon me just like that. You let me return to the immortal world alone. Even if the immortal world has a long life and endless years, how can those years be spent with you by my side?" Fairy Xingyu's cultivation was obviously no match for Su Ji. Su Ji's falling silhouette dragged her down slowly. Su Ji said emotionally, "Xingyu, since it's love, it doesn't matter how long it is. I'm already satisfied that I can accompany you for so many days. You still have a long way to go, and you have a lot of cultivation to go. You'd better go back quickly." "No way!" Fairy Xingyu cried. "I'd rather not return to the immortal world to be with you." "What nonsense!" Su Ji replied. "If you don't return to the immortal world, how can I recover from my injuries? If you don't return to the immortal world, who will come back to pick me up in the future? Besides, I've found a way to enter the Star Moon Palace this time. The next time the Star Moon Palace appears, Xiaohua and I will come in again." "Didn't you say that this is the last time the Star Moon Palace opens? Your divination skills have never been wrong." Fairy Xingyu didn't give up, as if she didn't believe Su Ji's words. Su Ji hurriedly replied, "How can the divination skills be accurate? That day, I divined that Xiaohua would be my help in returning to the immortal world. But my immortal mark has been damaged. How can I return? So, how can the so-called last time be taken seriously?" The Star Moon Palace had existed for God knows how many years since ancient times. How could it not appear just like that? Besides, if you can find the holy lotus seed of the Buddha fruit, you can also come in through this crack. You'd better go quickly. The crack of the immortal world is about to close. If you can't leave, I can't go back either. Holy lotus seed. Xiaohua's heart skipped a beat when he heard this. He hurriedly urged his body to rush over, but he was a cultivator of the human tribe. How could he resist the light pillar of the immortal world? It was impossible for him to get within 100 miles of the light pillar. Senior, Xiaohua said loudly, "What is the holy lotus seed? Maybe I have it here." Unfortunately, Xiaohua's words still couldn't break through the light pillar. Su Ji and Fairy Xingyu couldn't hear him at all. Fairy Xingyu came to her senses and nodded. "That's right. You're right. I'll hurry back to the immortal world. Just you wait, Su Ji. I'll definitely find the holy lotus seed of the Buddha kingdom for you. I'll risk my life for it." With that, Fairy Xingyu hugged Su Ji and kissed him fiercely on the lips. Then, she reluctantly let go of him and urged her body to fly toward the top of the light pillar. The light pillar, which had shrouded an area of tens of thousands of miles, became narrower as Fairy Xingyu flew higher. The crack above her head actually shrank at an accelerated rate. Su Ji's silhouette could no longer stay in the silver light. When he was about to fly out, his whole body suddenly expanded. Boom! An armor flew out of the silver light and landed on the silver light. Amidst the vibrating sound, the 10,000-foot figure slowly shrank again. However, Xiaohua could see clearly that on Su Ji's shrunken silver body, layers of grayish-black light fell and turned into nothingness. Wisps of faint fishy smell also drifted over from afar and rushed into Xiaohua's mouth and nose. Even Su Ji's immortal spiritual pressure felt weak when it landed on Xiaohua's body. It was far less powerful than before. What's going on? Xiaohua was a little surprised and looked at Su Ji in a daze. However, at this time, Su Ji didn't pay attention to Xiaohua. Instead, he looked up at the gradually shrinking and disappearing light pillar with a focused expression. Xiaohua looked at this unyielding man and didn't dare to ask. He just quietly accompanied Fairy Xingyu and watched her return to the immortal world. Chapter 45-52. Seeing Fairy Xingyu fall into the crack of the immortal realm, the brilliance of the immortal mark flashed. There was no resistance from the law of the realm. Su Ji felt relieved. He turned around and said to Xiaohua without hesitation, "Let's go." "Yes, Senior." Xiaohua sighed in his heart, but he still asked, "Senior, what is the Holy Lotus Seed?" "The Holy Lotus Seed is something from the Buddhist kingdom," Su Ji explained. Unfortunately, before he could finish speaking, a thunderous voice rang out behind him. "Su Ji, you dare to lie to me?" Xiaohua was shocked. Wasn't this voice Fairy Xingyu? He hurriedly turned his head, but the instant he did so, an extremely loud bang rang out from the starry sky. Then, an irresistible power of the world descended from above. Xiaohua felt the entire starry sky tremble violently, and the tremendous power mercilessly landed on his back. He watched as the starry sky before his eyes swayed and fell. Tens of thousands of rays of light were annihilated, and his body plummeted rapidly like a falling rock. "Xingyu, what are you doing?" Su Ji's furious voice rang in Xiaohua's ears again, but it was soon covered by the huge whistling wind. In just a few breaths, Xiaohua's body became light and the entire space stabilized. When Xiaohua looked around, wasn't he in front of the starry sky from before? "Su Ji." Fairy Xingyu's voice rang out very gently. "You've already experienced the third decay of immortals. How can I return to the immortal realm with peace of mind? You've been with me for so many years. Why don't you let me accompany you for a few more years?" You. Su Ji said 2 words, but he couldn't say anything else. Xiaohua turned his head and saw that Fairy Xingyu had returned. At this time, her body was shrouded by a layer of star gauze, and she had turned into the same size as Su Ji. Her appearance was the same as Su Ji's, so he couldn't see it. However, their hands were tightly clasped together, and their hearts were much closer than before. Su Ji looked at Fairy Xingyu and didn't speak for a long time. After a long while he said, "Why do you have to do this? If it weren't for you back then, I would have turned into a pile of bones." Fairy Xingyu replied faintly, "All these years, if it weren't for your company, I would have been possessed by the devil." "Your heart. I couldn't guess it at first, and I didn't dare to point it out. I was afraid that my thoughts would be different from yours. Now that you and I are of one mind, why can't we fly without the wings of the colorful phoenix? If you can return to the immortal realm, then I'll have hope as well. Now that you've returned, the crack in the immortal realm has disappeared." "My hope." Su Ji sighed. Unfortunately, before Su Ji could finish, Fairy Xingyu raised her hand to cover his mouth and whispered, "Don't lie to me. Your immortal's third decay is already very serious. You probably won't have the chance, nor will you be able to occupy another human body. You don't have much time left. If I return to the immortal world, how will I be able to see you again?" "Sigh," Su Ji said regretfully. "In the end, I didn't harden my heart." Naturally, Fairy Xingyu had noticed that Su Ji's immortal spirit body was different because she had kissed him on the lips. Therefore she smiled and said, "That's because I'm charming. Moreover, if it weren't for that kiss, wouldn't I have regretted it for the rest of my life?" Su Ji, who had no psychological burden, was obviously more talkative. He said with a smile, "Now I'm the one who will regret it for the rest of my life." "Humph, I'm with you. What do you have to regret?" Fairy Xingyu rebuked. "Why aren't you leaving? If you're any slower, I'll also regret it for the rest of my life." "Leave? Where to?" Su Ji was a little puzzled. "Naturally, to other starry skies." Fairy Xingyu replied, Since there are cracks in the immortal realm in this starry sky, maybe other starry skies also have rare treasures from the immortal realm. If you and I are fated, we may be able to find something similar to the holy lotus seed. Suji thought for a moment and nodded. You're right. Although we know where those starry skies are, we rarely go to check them out. Maybe there will be some surprises waiting for us. The most important thing is... Fairy Xingyu tightened her grip on Suji's hand and said, My happiness lies in these starry skies. At this point, Fairy Xingyu looked at Xiaohua and said, Xiaohua, are you willing to help us? Of course. Xiaohua nodded firmly. I'm honored to witness the love between two immortals. Let's go. Fairy Xingyu and Suji urged their figures and flew toward the starry skies not far away. Xiaohua followed the two immortals. The smell of blood drifted past his nose and mouth. Even if he closed his mouth and nose, he could still smell it. Xiaohua felt a little sour in his heart. Even someone as strong as Suji, a law enforcer of the immortal realm, would have his third decay. Life and death were everywhere in this world. However, at the same time, he was extremely gratified. If he could smell the blood from so far away, what about Fairy Xingyu? Suji's beloved was like this. Even if he died, his heart would not be broken. The starry skies next to them was still a starry skies maze. In the face of Xiaohua's terrifying sense of direction in the void, even an immortal would have to admit defeat. Xiaohua did not spend too much effort to break the starry skies maze. What appeared in front of Suji and Fairy Xingyu was an array that flickered with many rays of light. However, Suji and Fairy Xingyu did not hesitate. They each reached into Silverlight's chest and took out two cracked tiger talismans. These tiger talismans were even stranger. One was large and the other was small. Moreover, there was a token arrow piercing through the abdomen of the tiger talisman. When the two of them breathed out immortal chi, the two tiger talismans glowed with silver light and turned into the shape of a dragon and a tiger. When the two tiger talismans rushed into the array, the entire starry sky was strangely divided into two from the middle. What was beyond the starry sky made Xiaohua's jaw drop. It was a palace that looked like a hall. This palace was so big that it was as wide as heaven and earth. Xiaohua's divine thought could not see the end. Fairy Xingyu spread her divine thought and then raised her hand. A palm-sized key fell into her hand. Let's go. Fairy Xingyu originally wanted to take the key, but when she looked at the empty palace, her interest waned. She said this and was about to throw the key away. Xiaohua hurriedly shouted, Senior, leave this to me. Well, take it, you little miser. Fairy Xingyu did not ask any more questions and casually threw the key to Xiaohua. Xiaohua caught the key. Before he could take a look, the surrounding starry skies surged out again like a tide and pushed them out. Then, Xiaohua followed Suji and Fairy Xingyu to four starry skies that sealed off their divine thoughts. Suji and Fairy Xingyu were not prepared and could not enter one of them, but they could enter the other three starry skies. The situation in the starry skies was different, and the items obtained were also different. One was a thumb-sized crystal-like object, another was a small halberd, and the last was a token. Although the three items had extraordinary origins and even Fairy Xingyu could not tell the reason, she was concerned about Suji at this moment. Everything in her eyes was like dung. Without waiting for Xiaohua to speak, she gave them all to him. Xiaohua also took them without saying anything and directly sent them into the space. As Xiaohua had expected, these items did not fall into the Shenhua continent. Instead, they fell into different spaces. The crystal-like object even fell into the spiritual realm. When they came out of the last starry sky, Fairy Xingyu casually pointed to a starry sky and said, Let's go there. Yes, Senior. Xiaohua responded and was about to fly up. However, Fairy Xingyu said indifferently, There is no need to break the array here. This. Xiaohua was stunned. He had a bad feeling in his heart. Seeing Fairy Xingyu take Suji's hand and rush into the starry sky, Xiaohua slowly followed behind them. Sure enough, there was no array or door in the starry sky. There was only a sky full of stars, like eyes looking at Xiaohua with ridicule. Xiaohua sighed and thought to himself, The Star Moon Palace is a mysterious ancient divine object. There are endless secrets in it. Even this resplendent starry sky has many secrets. There might be the holy lotus seed that Suji needs. However, powerful immortals like Su Ji and Fairy Xingyue could only find out so much after so many years. Sometimes human strength is limited. This is indeed the case. Presumably, they have no more hope. Xiaohua did not dare to say more. He stood quietly in the starry sky. In the distance, the two silver figures were snuggling together. There was no longer the majesty of the supreme divine powers of the three continents. What was left was only sweetness and desolation. No. After a few minutes, Fairy Xingyu, who was curled up in Suji's arms, suddenly raised her head and said stubbornly, "I can't give up like this. Suji, let's rush over the platform and go to the hall. The starry sky, there is a corner of the immortal realm. There might be some opportunities." "No need." Suji shook his head and said, "We have not been able to gather the required credentials for that forbidden area for tens of thousands of years. Even if we get there, we can't go in. No, if we don't go and take a look, I really can't accept it." Fairy Xingyu was equally determined. "All right then." Suji could not resist Fairy Xingyu. He turned to Xiaohua and said, "Xiaohua, after the platform is a place that we explored for the second time. There are a lot of credentials there. We have not been able to gather them, so we never went there again. It is very dangerous after the platform. The extremely mysterious thunder I told you about before is behind the platform. This thunder is even more difficult to guard against than the forbidden array of the Ghost Plane. We still have some resistance, but none of the cultivators of the three continents can resist it. You don't have to go there. Stay here and meditate on the starry sky maze. When the Star Moon Palace is closed, the power of the stars and the moon will naturally send you out of the Star Moon Palace. You're tuning in to the Wisdom Diary YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.